You know what? It all looks like it's going well, and then it goes to hell. Sorry about that. Thank you very much, Dalton Brazier, for letting me know, so I'll restart. Welcome to Tales from SYL Ranch, streaming now live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And I'm Bill Stone. Tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, we have, of course, the weekly current Lancaster County, Nebraska virus statistics where I live. We will have an interview with J. Marshall Presnell, cryptocurrency expert, regarding your immediate financial future and some cryptocurrency issues that go along with that. We will talk about the recent hack of the meat processing plant stuff, and how all companies really are IT companies, whether they know it or not right now. We'll have a Superman and Lois Season 1, Episode 8 review, and I'll talk about a second channel that I'm thinking about discussing. And we can, of course, talk about anything else that I can think of and anything else that you may want. Now, this is a live stream, so of course you feel free to talk with me about anything on chat. I have them all working now on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. You can ask me any question, whether it's political, social, the virus whose name I can't mention on the YouTube side without risking that video being banned or deranked, the United States Civil War II, or things relating to science fiction, fantasy, horror, superheroes, and other related genres. I am happy to answer each and every question in as much detail and as truthfully as I can. There are some personal issues that I won't discuss, but pretty much anything else is fair game. I will get to as many of my viewers as I can, with the understanding that I don't want to go much longer than about 3 hours, because I'm an old man with lower back arthritis, and after about 3 hours my back starts to hurt. So, to answer the question that nobody asked, what are the weekly Lancaster County virus statistics for where I live? Well, as always, I source this with the City of Lincoln, Lancaster County Health Department, and that is linked to in my description box, will be linked to in my description box when I'm done on Twitch. Some of the statistics that I give aren't quite the same as what you'll see on that website, but that's because I'm actually using a more accurate count of the county's population, and it is higher than theirs. As always, our Lancaster County population remains roughly the same at 324,216. Total Lancaster County deaths is now up to 237, which is up 1 from last week. And no doubt the COVIDians here will blame the fact that this was on our mask order finally being lifted last week. By comparison, as always, the number of people who died of heart disease in 2019 alone was 485, which means that over about a year and a half of the pandemic, the number of people who died of the virus remains less than half of the number who died of heart disease in only 2019, making, I think, of course, heart disease actually some kind of epidemic in the Lincoln-Lancaster County area. Total Lancaster County confirmed cases is up to 31,379, which is up 30 from last week. This continues a long downward trend of our increases. We peaked quite a long time ago. And to be honest, this is, again, the lowest number in 3 weeks since I started tracking the virus on this show. The number, frankly, when you get down to 30 out of a population of 324,000 plus, 30 is starting to become statistically insignificant. The number of positive cases classified as recovered is now up by 348 from last week. Now, that's a good thing. That's more people who have recovered. I don't know quite what this number means, to be perfectly honest. And given that there are only 137 deaths, I guess that leaves about 1,567 people who are in some kind of Schrodinger's cat style limbo of both dead and not dead simultaneously. And that is, by the way, 349 people who had recovered more from last week, and that officially classes them as alive. The total number of completed vaccinations in Lincoln, Lancaster County is 151,032, up 2,081 from last week, making the percentage of the population that has been vaccinated approximately 46.584%. And given our other rates and general declines over time, what we'd seen prior to the vaccinations, what we'd seen after, I would have to say that the vaccine has had absolutely no effect. Deaths as a percentage of confirmed cases is at 0.755%, up 0.002%, statistically identical for months now. Deaths as a percentage of the population is at 0.073%, up 0.003% from last week. Statistically identical since this pandemic started, which is one of the many reasons that I look at it and I say, given all of these stats and how they haven't changed very much, really all this vaccination has had little to no effect. So, got a couple things to talk about here. Let me slip down because I changed the order of things I was going to talk about for the benefit of Marshall. We have a few very, very interesting things going on with respect to things happening in the financial world. If you don't know it, we're already seeing about 25% inflation here in the U.S., and it's going to get significantly worse, as Marshall is going to show you in a way that I can't possibly show you. Hey, Shadow Man, how's it going? I'm going to talk about some of that stuff that you talked about on Twitter today a little bit later. I wanted to get Marshall in because it seemed like he might have some time crunch. So, that being said, I will get Marshall on the phone. He is actually already here. Hi, Marshall. Are you there with me tonight? Sorry, hello? Are you there this time?
I am not here this time.
Well, you sound like you're here.
Okay, we'll go with that.
Well, as I said, we got some very interesting things going on. I have a screen share. By the way, I seem to have mastered the art of doing video over this, at least with Google Hangouts, and I think I can duplicate it on other services, so I may start going away from Skype for call-ins and into something where I can have you on video if people call in. So Let me throw up Marshall's screen share here right now. I'm not seeing anything on it, so I'll kind of let you take it from here, Marshall, because you've got a much better handle than I on this.
I've got to figure out how to get that screen over to you. Share screen. That's how you do it. Yes.
There we go. Yes, here we have this paraphrased TikTok post. Oh, this blows my mind.
Bill, I am convinced that the person who wrote this is actually one of the students from the place that shall not be named that you taught, or no, that you kicked out.
That I kicked out. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, man, buying Doge.
Well, for
$5,000 buying Doge.
The number of things wrong with this is numerous. Okay, number one, buying Doge to begin with, a meme coin that has absolutely no utility. Right. Buying $5,000 of it, which multiplies your sins, and then selling it at $25.87 and asking how you get your money back.
Bavis, you don't.
Yeah, so that's the third one, and then the fourth one, nuke to crypto.
Yeah.
Okay,
obviously.
Let us use it in a positive way. If you are new to crypto, learn before you invest.
Yes. Learn before you invest.
When I first saw that, I laughed for 10 minutes. I mean,
I believe it.
Talk about your hard-earned lessons,
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
we need to get to the serious part, I guess.
Yep.
Oops, that's not the serious part. How to make millions of dollars. It's not as dramatic as you might think. In fact, it's easier than ever and getting easier, and you really won't like it. And I'm being dead serious. You're going to be able to make millions of dollars very quickly, and you won't like it.
Yes.
And
Marshall and I have gone over this a bit before the show, and things are way worse than you'd imagine.
As we all are probably suspicious of, the United States government, at least, I don't know about other world governments or all of them. I know some of them have done the same thing. Has a little spending problem, and they've been spending money like a horde of drunken sailors, and that's being unkind to drunken sailors.
Yeah.
And they've been hiding it from us. they've been playing games. But accidentally, the Congressional Budget Office has committed the ultimate atrocity and told the truth in a very sneaky way.
By
And the
accident.
easiest, yeah, by accident, I think. Um, I'll show you what I discovered about a week ago. If you go to the U.S. Debt Clock, usdebtclock.org, you can follow along on the screen or you can go there yourself. There's a little button up at the top. It says Debt Clock Time Machine. It's right here, if you can see the screen. You click that and go back to 2018. And then you see things are very small. But let's bring it up. Oh, 2016, I'm sorry. We're in 2016. You go down here and you look around. And eventually, and I always have trouble finding this one, even though I've looked at it 400 times. You get to this number right here. Savings per family. That's $7,588, right? Now, that's, ignore if it's, realistic in your eyes. This is what the CBO says for 2016 and what they have reported for 2016. Now let's take a time, let's return to the DeLorean and come to the present, 2021. Now it's over here. So it's now saying 36,810. Okay. Well, now let's see. What could have intervened? Oh, the virus and all the reactions to the virus. People getting money from the government, people getting, able to stay home. Some people did side gigs. I can see it.
Not
they hoarded a little
spending
bit.
of money. I mean, like here, for example, I don't know how it was everywhere, but I walked into a local department store because I need to buy some some new jeans, and discovered that you couldn't actually go in and try them on in the fitting room, which is like, okay, well, I ain't buying any clothes that I don't know fit.
Right.
I assume there's a lot of people who saved money on that.
Oh, yeah. All kinds of disposable income was not disposed of because, things were closed. Can't
Right.
go out to restaurants, all this other stuff. And so that kind of makes sense. I mean, little on the high. Let's just do a calculation. Yes, you're going to see me mess up now. Okay. 7,588. That was 2016. 36,810. And what I'm going to do is do a delta on percentage. Now I have to get off of this. I've tried to punch that button there and it just doesn't like me. It's because it's just a projection. That's a 385% increase.
385% increase in savings.
Yeah, I can see it. I can kind of see it. Seems a little high, but yeah, I can see it. Let's go back in the DeLorean. Ooh, 2025. The CBO projections for 2025.
$500,000.
$511,000, 269. Wow. So, what was the previous number? 37,000?
Yeah.
I'm just going to say 37,000. Let me jump over. And that's 511,000. It's 37,000. And then 511,000. And pull that delta.
1,281.08%.
That's approximate.
Yeah.
Okay, that one I don't get. I can't rationalize that one.
No.
I wonder what could it be? What could it be? Any ideas?
Oh, I don't know. Right at the moment, we got 25% inflation.
Oh, no. We do not have 25% inflation. I mean, look at this. This is the CPI, Bill. Here's the last few months of the CPI. I mean, Here it is to 2016. This is 2003, all the way up to today. Let me move it over a little bit. There's no big jump like that. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Did I equate CPI with inflation? I sure did. CPI is a consumer price index.
Right.
It is an entity that can be manipulated very easily.
Right.
And manipulate it they do.
It's manipulated repeatedly during my lifetime.
Yeah. Inflation is not a function of price. Price is a function of inflation.
Right.
Inflation is a function of supply. So we're back to our old friends, the M1 and M2 money supplies. So let's take a look at M2 and see what we got. I just coincidentally had it here. Okay, the lower number here is CPI, and this is M2.
Yep.
That's
money supply that the government has been pumping in.
Well, no, that's certain money.
Right.
That the government.
Not all of it.
Yeah, for all of it, we have to look at M1. There we go.
And it goes damn near asymptotic at one point.
It really does. And the
so anytime the government, just so that my viewers are clear, anytime the government pumps money in, you get inflation.
Mm-hmm. This is this is February of 2020, and then right up.
Yep.
And this is a subset of that.
Right.
The M2 is a subset of M1. We're in trouble, folks. The CBO just confirmed it. The value of the dollar is going down.
Yeah.
So if you
something
want to know
you can feel even now if you go to buy almost everything, you can feel the prices going up.
So I'm going to answer this question: how to make millions of dollars quickly? Wait. That's it.
Yeah.
Wait. Eventually, your salary will be millions of dollars a month.
Yep. A function of pumping money into the system.
And the value will be less than it's worth now. Because anytime you inflate a currency, the value flows from anybody who holds it back to the printers of it, the United States Treasury. We are really in trouble.
Yeah, as I've said previously, they have two ways of dealing with the debt. One of which is to default, which they're not going to do, and the other one is to pump money into the economy, making the dollar worth less, thereby making the debt worth less. And they've chosen to do that.
It should be easy to keep track of it with M1 and M2. We shouldn't have much problem. Wouldn't you say, Bill?
Well, ordinarily, yes.
Oh, hell. There's the CPI, and it goes out to here. It goes out to March, April. Goes out to April.
Yep.
February.
Yep. They stopped publishing those numbers.
They stopped tracking it.
In February.
The two key metrics. The two key metrics that people need to know in order to figure out how bad off it is, they've stopped publishing.
Yeah.
But there's an alternate metric. And Bill doesn't even know this one.
Ooh.
The one thing that the Federal Reserve must do is publish its balance sheet. And since all the money hits the Fed Reserve's balance sheet, all you have to look is that. That's all you have to look at. I have not compiled that data yet, but that's all you have to look at. I have looked at their balance sheet and I found the numbers that we need to track. But there's alternate ways around to skin the cat. and I will
Well,
be.
I assume those numbers are going to
working.
be even more asymptotic as it goes along.
Oh, they will be. I can almost guarantee you.
Yeah.
This only shows the first of two payments, the $2 trillion payouts. There's one $2 trillion payout that came right after this, right after the reporting cycle, not after this date of,
Right.
of the end of February, but after the reporting cycle that needs to happen. It gets on the next reporting cycle. And that's one of the ones that were cut off here. So that's the first 2 trillion. There was another 2 trillion.
Yeah.
They're getting ready to do a 1.8 trillion, and we've got a $6 trillion budget proposal
Right.
from the White House. Like I said,
Which will be signed.
just wait. You'll be a millionaire.
I'm sorry?
Well, let me just wait. You'll be a millionaire. The thing
Yeah.
is
It just won't be worth anything.
I phrased this very carefully. How to make millions of dollars. Just wait. How to increase your held value a wee bit harder.
Yeah.
You've got to increase value versus the dollar. And since the dollar is falling like a rock in a vacuum, obviously you can't hold it.
Right. Just to be clear, we do not offer any level of financial advice on this show. We just show what the numbers are. You make your own conclusions.
Absolutely. This really shouldn't be even considered financial advice, even if we did offer financial advice. This is common sense.
Right. This is the stats.
If the currency you're holding can't buy as much today as it did yesterday, you need a better currency.
Yep.
And the currency that we have right now, the US dollar, is actually a debt instrument. It is not an asset instrument or an equity instrument,
Right.
Which means what you're holding is US government debt. What you need to hold is an asset, something with utility, something that people need, something that people want. Gold, real estate, crypto, stocks, even.
Yeah.
You got to get out of the dollar in order to survive this. Now,
Yeah, it's a losing proposition.
I had a 2-year plan for myself to get out of the U.S. dollar, and I'm talking about completely out. The only thing I will take U.S. dollar for is my salary every month, and I'll immediately convert it.
Yeah.
That 2-year plan, once I discovered all this and put all the pieces together, has now been abbreviated to 2 months.
Wow.
By 2 months from now, I will no longer have my savings account. I will no longer have my brokerage account. I will just have my checking account. And when I get the check, about 80% of it will go into crypto. And 20% will stay out. I'll pull it out as I need. I'm not recommending you do that.
No.
All I am saying is that's what I am doing. I don't have a huge net worth. I'm trying to make it bigger. I'm trying to make it better. But you can't make it bigger and better when you're looking at potentially 30 and 40% inflation within 5 years.
Right.
You simply cannot do it.
Yep.
So you have to consider the US dollar a lost cause. What would work? Personally, I have chosen crypto.
Right.
And partially because I finally found this, I brought it up for Bill, and he was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Bitcoin does not violate Mises regression theorem. Completely wrong title for what he does here. This is Satoshi Nakamoto in 2010. As a thought experiment, imagine there was a base metal as scarce as gold, but with the following properties: boring, gray in color, not a good conductor of electricity, not particularly strong, but not ductile or easily malleable either, not useful for any practical or ornamental purpose, and just one special magical property: it can be transported over a communications channel if it somehow acquired any value at all for whatever reason. Then anybody wanting to transfer wealth over a long distance could buy some, transmit it, and have the recipient sell it. Maybe it could get an initial value circularly by people foreseeing the potential usefulness. I would want some. He's got some. He's got over 1 million.
Yeah.
Maybe collectors, any random reason could spark it. I think the traditional qualifications for money were written with the assumption that there were so many competing objects in the world that are indeed scarce. An object with the automatic bootstrap of intrinsic value will surely win out over those without intrinsic value. But if there was nothing in the world with intrinsic value that could be used as money, only scarce but no intrinsic value, I think people would still take up some. I'm using the word scarce here to mean limited potential supply.
Right.
He just described Bitcoin.
Yep.
And he described it in a way that should make your head kind of go sideways. It's like it has no value, but it has value because it has value.
Yeah.
But then again, everything that has value because it has value.
True.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's so weird because you have to completely rethink the concept of value and associate it to absolute scarcity, not
Right.
scarcity plus something else.
Right.
And if you do that, it becomes a pure mathematical formula. And if you can create scarcity by math, which is what Bitcoin does,
Right.
then this completely abstract thing becomes a viable currency. He was so right in what he said, and he was so wrong in what he said. Because he was right in that this is a brilliant idea. The concept is valid. He was wrong in this isn't a currency you go out and buy a Coke Zero with, or a
Right.
pair of jeans, or a car. This is akin to what's called the SDRs in international finance. SDRs are called special drawing rights. And no, you don't have to be an artist to get in. It's a right on a pool of dollars and euros and all kinds of other things that each nation has, and they can trade SDRs amongst themselves. And it's kind of like, it's a rich man's world and you can't play in it until now.
Yeah.
Now we have a universal reserve currency, and people can get in on it.
Yep.
It's
not that hard. I just made my first foray. Well, not my first, but first major foray into it. I threw a few $100s. That's all I have to spare. But
Well, you did not get in a good time. It's not a bad time.
yeah, no, I know when a better time would have been, and
Yeah.
it wasn't now. But I still should be able to see some benefit out of it.
You right now, just guessing. I don't believe I'm going to say this in public. I really don't. I didn't even say it when we were doing the test, Bill. I used to think that the high for this market cycle was probably going to be between $100,000 and $200,000.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were saying 250, 300. I'm very conservative. I don't go for pie in the sky moon boy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found the inflation rate,
Uh-huh.
and I'm going, okay, if the Congressional Budget Office is saying we're going to see a 15x in savings, and we're at $50,000 average, that's damn near $1 million. That's $750,000.
Yeah.
And if we're at $750,000 now, and after what we discovered during the test, because there is now, in my opinion, enough evidence to put forth as a hypothesis that the injection of the money in 2020 into the economy is what spurred a premature launch of this cycle.
Right.
And
Marshall and I, just for my audience, because we always want to test this stuff when I've done it for the first time, screen sharing and getting things up here that's video from someone else's. We actually ran across a statistic that Marshall had not seen before.
Well, I'd seen the statistic, but I had never plotted it. And if I recall correctly, it was an accident that we plotted it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Literally. What I did was, let me jump over here, go to Bitcoin. It was M1. I think it was M1, wasn't it?
I think it was M1, yeah.
I'm going to switch to an ultra long time frame on this. This is the monthly time frame. Okay, I think I just passed it.
Yeah, it was sudden jump was in there.
Right here is April 17. So that gives you an idea of the time frame we're talking about. Here is today. Here is that bump. Now, because we're there we go.
Yeah,
we're on linear scale. This is the M1 money supply. And it the interesting thing, okay, am I on Heikinashi? I am on Heikinashi. The interesting thing is right there. Okay, these are what's called Heikinashi candlesticks. They're basically a 2-period average of the price. They don't show perfect absolute price, but what they do show is trend. So just so you understand that. So red obviously is a downtrend, green is up, blah, blah, blah. If you look at this M1 jump, number one, it goes red right during the first pump and jumps straight up. And when it hits here, Bitcoin starts its move upward.
Right.
Now, keep that in mind as I take you back a little bit to show you where we come from. Hang on here. That's it? Yeah. This is basically the current cycle we were in. I was there already. Cool. This is what I call the gamma peak. There's epochs in the way the price seems to work. And I call them epochs. That's from low to low. So the epoch for gamma, or for gamma here, starts way back here and goes.
By the way, just so that you're aware, when he's talking about gamma, he's identified several different cycles for Bitcoin in terms of the price upticks and downticks, and where they begin and where they end, and he's just naming them with Greek letters. So there's the alpha epoch, the beta epoch, gamma, and delta.
Right, and then delta, what we're in now. So this is the history of Bitcoin from the time it first really emerged on an exchange. The alpha epoch is this area right here. During alpha, from its low to its peak, you got a 3191x multiplier. Then you had a pullback. During beta starts at the pullback, you had a 624x increase and then a pullback. Gamma had 122x, then a pullback. Delta, we're in now. And right there is M1.
Yeah.
Now, you start to get a feel for these things and understanding that, the cycles are getting, they're changing shapes. It starts out very, very thin and tall, and it kind of gets very wide and longer. And you can see that in the time sequence. So I'm looking at these two times, the delta time, and the gamma time. Right now, they look about the same size. The weird thing, let me go into auto mode, or go out of auto mode so I can pull down here and look at it, is they don't look like it's the same. It don't look like it's only the same time frame.
Yeah.
But it looks like it's almost the same. I have to go out of log mode to show this. I don't know if I can show it in log mode. Hang on. We didn't try this.
Feel free.
I'm working on it. Okay. One of these things don't look like the others.
Yeah. This
In linear
Delta
mode.
Epic.
So I'm putting this stuff together. It does not look like the others. And what I did was looked at time to recoup from the previous cycle. And I'm going to take the pull cycles off just so we can see this better. So this is the top of alpha. If you'd move forward in time to here, at this particular point in time, February 2013, you never saw those prices again. You never saw those prices again, ever.
Right.
Look, nothing. Same with beta. Same with gamma so far. But look at, I mean, this doesn't look like a cycle.
Yeah. It looks oddly artificial.
17 months time to recoup, the 42 months time to recoup, 36 months time to recoup.
Yeah. You would think it would be longer.
And it's after this intersection.
Yep. It's after they spewed a whole bunch of U.S. dollars into the system.
Exactly. Thereby lowering the value of the dollar, thereby increasing the value of Bitcoin. And if you look at it, it went up about 3x from there.
Yeah.
Because right here is about $20,000. Okay, a little bit delayed, but from 20,000 up to here, which is 64,000, is 3x.
Yeah.
That's pretty much equivalent to 33% injection, if you think about it.
Yeah.
1 to 3. And how much did they say was being printed versus how much in circulation? What, 40%?
Yeah.
A lot of coincidences there.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, and this is heretical. I'm thinking, this is not the cycle. This is a reaction.
It's going to be longer. This is just a artificially changed thing because of the money influx.
Right. I mean, it should be here. Mm-hmm. And if you look at it, that would make a lot of sense. You know, you come down, you come up, you come down, you come up, you continue up, and then you start going up, giving you a nice, 52 month or whatever, let's call it 48 month recoup cycle. I don't think we've started.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's too short a period of time that appears to be altered artificially just because of that M1 money supply.
But it hasn't. It's not the right metric. That's the point. I think we haven't really started this cycle. Well, we started the epic. We started the epic here,
right?
But we really hadn't started the cycle that was supposed to come after it.
The up-down cycle that would have come after it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I am thinking is that this is the entry point to the cycle, right in this area.
See.
Just like
one of those highs would have been.
This, see how it moves up a little bit and then it starts really going up. Same here. There's an entry. There's kind of like a ramp. Here's it is. Really good to see. You get a bouncy ramp and then you start this beautiful curve.
Right.
Beautiful curve there. This one not so beautiful, but nobody knew what the hell was going on. So but it is kind of nice. This one just doesn't look like that.
Yeah. It just
goes beep.
And then bink up, yeah.
Yeah. Plus, and this is going to be very hard to show, but I'm going to try. I'm going to go to the weeklies. I showed this to Bill, and he's going like, it's very easy to say one of these things doesn't belong here.
Yeah.
I'm going to cut off all the stupid things, and I'm going to cut off M1. This is purely the price. What do you see?
See a
That's
high
a point.
point followed by a dip, followed by a much higher point, followed
Focus
by a
on the
dip.
point. Focus on the market type. Top. Beep, bop, boop. Have to do that one. Hi, Gina.
Yeah, I do.
This is a sword.
Right.
As I said earlier, it's the sword of Damocles pointing the wrong way. You know, it's a hard spike straight up, and when you zoom in, you can see it too, and I'll show you that in a moment. This is a hard spike shooting straight up. This is a hard spike shooting straight up. What?
Don't yet have that hard spike shooting straight up.
No, you don't even have a spike.
Mm-hmm.
That thing eased off, and then sort of went down.
Yeah.
And this didn't bother me in the least because I saw it was a Head and Shoulders pattern, and so everybody's going like, there's no coffee, you know. And I'm going, dude, it's retracing down to the Head and Shoulders target level. Calm down. No coffee, you know.
Right. Yeah, people who see it as a non-existent loss. You know, the money I put into it, I think at about 33, 34, something like that.
You're still up.
I never invest anything that I can't afford to lose anyway.
Oh, you should never do that.
Yeah. But I mean, I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, the next time that I want to think about selling is going to be at one of these giant, you know, spear-like spikes.
Yeah. They're called blow-off tops. Okay. And everything in the market is based on one thing. That is not what you think it is. It's not price. It's not environment. It's not government. It's psychology. Right. And how people work. There's so much snake oil. I think I mentioned the Fibonacci sequences earlier about snake oil. Fibonacci sequences it's a sequence of numbers that is the total of the two numbers preceding it in the sequence. So if you take 1 and 2, the next one is 3, then you'd have 2 plus 3 is 5, 5 plus 3 is 8, etc. You know, probably got that wrong.
I don't remember. It's been a long time. They made us learn how to calculate Fibonacci sequences at various programming languages, but it's been a long time since I've touched it.
It's got a whole lot of practical uses in math and science and nature and biology. Yeah. In the way people perceive things, the golden ratio is a function of the Fibonacci sequence. But in finance, no. It doesn't. There's no correlation. There's no correlate that you can actually point to. It's astrology. It really is. It's flipping astrology. Yeah. But there's an interesting thing when you get to the point where you believe in something and you see everybody else doing it, it actually begins to obtain power. Right. And then
oddly enough, in my video comments on YouTube, Johnny Arcade is just asking if you think that the self-fulfilling prophecy has any bearing on crypto movement. That's kind of what we're talking about.
Well, that's actually the fundamental thesis. Yeah. If you think back to what Satoshi Nakamoto said in his thought experiment, if people believe it to have value, it will obtain value. Right. I mean, you know, it's not a government with military and guns and bombs. It's people saying, this is better. That's the entire concept of its value. People making an individual decisions. That one sucks. This one is good. Right. That's it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's a psychological syndrome as well. It's the same psychological syndrome that drives the Fibonacci retracement bullshit. Whoops, I said bullshit. Bullshit.
Oh, don't worry. I don't think anybody notices or cares.
So
I've seen so many other YouTubers swear.
I forgot how to swear. No, that's a lie. You've heard me do it so many times.
Yeah. I know you.
Okay. So we've been talking a lot, but how to increase your held value. Number one, and this is going to sound totally stupid. Don't sell lower than you buy.
Wow, what a concept.
Okay. look at it this way. Seeing how Bitcoin has acted in the past,
Right.
if you were to take a flash judge of it, and that's what I call, it's a system I used to use when I was actively trading. I would get charts, and I had a computer then. Yes, it was not the Dark Ages. And I would program the charts to do things like this, to take a stock like this and occasionally flip it like this, or swap left to right. And I would then pick buy, question, or sell. And I had it on, 1, 2, 3 on my keyboard. And it would come up and I'd have like 1 or 2 seconds to make my decision. And this is what I would see. This, for me, buy. Why? And the only thing I can say is, well, look at it.
Yeah.
Observe
It hasn't
it.
really gone down.
I mean, it's gone down occasionally, but it always comes back up.
Yeah, it always comes back up and considerably higher than it had the last time.
And there's the fact that it hits a peak, and once it passes that peak, it never comes back.
Right.
So this to me would scream buy.
Yeah.
Let's look at something here. I wish I could turn the screen off for just a second, but I'm not going to.
I don't know how to do that.
It's okay. Hopefully I did it fast enough nobody noticed.
Hey man, we're looking if I got it on the screen at all. So
okay. Everybody look at this chart and make a decision within 3 seconds if you want to buy, sell, or question it.
Well, I'm not sure what well,
Time's up.
It's all going down. So
that is the inverse of
no
the CPI.
peaks. I'm sorry?
That's the inverse chart, upside down chart of the CPI, the Consumer Price Index.
In dollars.
And, yeah. Now, what's the opposite of a price decrease if you're looking at products that go into the calculation for inflation? An inflation increase.
Right.
Right? So, whereas CPI shows your rate of inflation, which looks like this, the inversion of it shows the rate of loss of value.
Right.
That's what your dollar is doing.
Yep. And it's going to do it even worse.
Want to hold on to it when, not to put too loud of a point on it, but, I've got this one reversed. Oh, that's my active chart. I don't want to show that. It's not as pretty. Or would you rather have that?
Yeah. That curve or the one going straight down?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So how to get rich or how to increase value with Bitcoin? Number one, do not sell lower than what you buy it as. Right. It might be a week. It may be a month. It may be a year. And as we've seen there, it might be 3.5 years.
Right.
Do not sell until the sell price is higher than the buy price.
Right. The
second trick, and you only have to do this like once a week. This is just so cool. It's the simplest way in the world. Actually, I get paid once a month, so I only have to do it once a month. Learn what the previous cycle looked like. Okay. Get yourself some scratch paper and scratch it out. Put some numbers on the side here so you know what the numbers are. Pull this line over like I did. And okay, let's try to simulate it. All right, this is going to be a little weird. You're talking to me. What are you talking about? So, oops, that's the worst positioned line on the planet. There you go. So, eventually it's going to come back to there.
Right.
That's your premise.
Right.
So, and we see it actually does a little further down the road. After it comes down a nice long distance, and usually it's over 70%. Let's bring it down to, let's see what 70% would be. That's 76. That's close enough. 73% top to bottom.
Right.
So right about here. Every pay period, take the same amount of money, throw it into Bitcoin. Don't care. Don't even blink if it's going up, down, left, right, sideways, doing somersaults. It doesn't matter.
Right.
As long as you are under that line.
Right.
Just put it in, go up, go down, go up, crash down, come up. And eventually when you get up to here, stop.
Stop buying it there because you've just hit the same point that you had bought at before. And it's almost certainly going to go up at a peak like we've seen before.
True, because anything that happens before this cross, it never sees again.
Right.
So every single trade you made in this area will be a gain.
Right.
Every single one. So since I do not believe this is a top, I'm going to go back to the previous and show you what happens. Okay. There's the top.
Right.
It's over here somewhere. That's probably about a 70% retrace. You go down and you're DCAing in all over here. You get up to here and you stop.
Right.
The interesting thing about it is you really don't start that asymptotic move until you pass that particular number.
Right.
So let's measure that too. So we're about right here. That's close. How much did we go up? So far, I can't get to it. Let's try it the other way. Yes, we're a professional organization here. Can I hit it this time? I actually got somewhere close to it. Okay, so here to here. That's close enough. So I have to do it the other direction because the loss is not the same as a... Okay, it's not going to be exact, but...
good enough for government work.
7,119%.
Yeah, increase.
So imagine when you're buying in every week, every 2 weeks, every month, from here all the way up to here, all of that, you've already made a little bit of profit anyway because you're coming up. And then from that point on, you make 1,700% going to the top.
On whatever you paid, even to the high point of the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a guaranteed way not to lose money. It's a guaranteed way to make money. Your job is to figure out when to get out. Right. And there is a strategy you can use, and I can get into it later. I don't want to dominate your whole show, Bill.
That's fine.
So, getting out is more important than getting in.
Right.
And the psychology of the market blow-off, the market top blow-off, is it's very easy to spot. Everywhere you go on social media, your friends, everybody is going like, this is amazing. It's incredible. You would not believe this thing is going to go 100x from here. And unfortunately, they're usually talking about right about here, at this area. But the craze, the mania, the euphoria comes in, and the price
immediately after that, they start going, "Oh my God, it's too high."
No, immediately after that, you sell Doge for $2,700. But the point is the wicks the candles keep getting bigger and they go up, and it's kind of like the crescendo of an orchestral piece,
right? And
you can view it. You can view it on the charts, and you can see it really well in Heikin-Ashi candles, which. We can talk about that at one point or another. Okay, look. Let me expand the view. So you're coming up, it's like,
Yeah. And then
you never had the last do,
right.
and you can see those candles getting longer and longer and longer, and then pop goes the weasel, and it goes to that. On the first or second red candle here, I would have sold.
Okay.
Because this is anomalous
Right.
to everything we've seen
Going
before.
up with no downturn ever along in there, yeah.
Well, no, I'm talking about if you look at these, like,
yeah,
I'm sorry,
there's a
they do grow,
hike and
but
a like that, and then suddenly it damn near goes asymptotic, and then there's going to be a drop off right after that.
yeah, okay. The bottom of this candle is $11,000. The top is $19,000.
Mm-hmm.
It doubled in a week.
Yeah,
You cannot miss it, really. The problem most people have is they stay in too long.
Right. Yeah.
So I was in this. I did not do what I am going to tell you because I had to experience it in order to understand what to look for. Now I have a rule set, and it's my trading rules that are 100% accurate in predicting predicting actions that you must take for directions you're going in. It's called GYR, Geyer. And it stands for green, yellow, red. It also stands for billion, believe it or not. And unfortunately, it also stands for a type of cattle. But I call it green, yellow, red. It's the only word that fit. Whenever you're coming up to a decision point, you don't plan for one without planning for the other two. It's that simple. In this, I've got a program in my head, an algorithm. And it's if you see increasing candle sizes, that's exponential.
Right.
It's not growing linearly. It's not growing rationally. You have to start planning for this. Green, do nothing. It's real simple. You're going up, fine. You start to go sideways. Be very careful. Watch it like a hawk. And there's a whole nother set of GYRs for that. But if you immediately go red, okay, if I go red more than about 4 or 5 candles, then I want to get out.
Right.
But if you're really smart, you have a GYR for if you start seeing asymptotically increasing candles. It's like, okay, sell 10% or 15%. Now sell 35%. Now sell 25%, and then wait until you go over the top before you sell the last 25%. The point is you want to get out here,
right,
in this general area. And remember, from here to here is half the value. So you don't want to make a lot of mistakes up here.
Right.
So now you're out. You sold out at, let's call it $10,000. You ride down. You ride down. You ride down. Oh, I can't see. There we go. This is probably a good place to get in. I think that's somewhere around that magical number. Mm, 81%. So you come in a little bit above that right there, and you start dollar cost averaging back in all the way through this, all the way through the COVID pandemic, all the way up here, all the way up there, up to here. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's when you DCA in. You also, at this point, buy everything you sold here. So you sold at, let's say 10,000. You're now here at 4,000, or 4,000. What once was 1 is now 2.5.
Right.
And
the trend is always upward considerably from wherever those peaks are.
Yes. Plus, and this is the cool one, remember when you stop DCAing in here? You stop dollar cost averaging? You kept taking the money out of your account. You just didn't put it in here.
Right.
You waited. You waited until you got, I'm sorry. Yeah. You waited until you hit here. And then you pump it in. So now you've got your dollar cost averaging sum that you're putting in normally. You've got your dollar cost averaging hoard that you were saving over the peak. And then you've got the peak. You've now probably quadrupled your stake. So you 4x'd on the way down.
Right. Oh, man.
And that is how you increase your value. There are lots of things you have to be aware of. You have to be aware of taxes. You have to be aware of fees. You have to be aware of spreads, all kinds of stuff like that. Fees and spreads, not so much if you're going to trade this lightly.
Right.
Optimally, you'd only trade 2 times a cycle. Optimally. So.
Well, it all requires watching and being aware of what those epics are that you've mentioned, and I think it's very, very useful to see that. It certainly was for me. I hadn't ever thought about breaking it down in those terms, so being able to see, wait a minute, look, there's points that it's like this constantly upgrading thing that never goes back down below what the top of the last one was.
Yeah, once it appeared. Now this is appearing,
right.
I mean, this is true right now. Tomorrow it may be false.
Right.
It's like Dr. Fauci's advice. Might be true, might be false. We don't know. But yeah, that is the way. Let me get rid of this. I put a bigger cursor in so you could see it. Unfortunately, it makes it impossible for me to do fine movements.
Okay.
So,
well, we appreciate the bigger cursor. So,
I've seen so many people talk about charts on YouTube and do things, and their cursor's like the size of an ant's ass.
Right.
And there's another way you can do this, just to show you how much thought I put into this. Here's the other way. This you can't miss.
Yeah.
If I tell you, I'm talking about this right here, you know exactly where I'm talking about. That's not the standard color. The standard color for the lines are like these almost invisible lines.
Of course.
And this is the standard cursor for TradingView. And I'm just sitting there going like, guys, you're not even thinking about your audience, are you?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when you got where I'm at, where it's 1080p and 60 frames per second, the cursor gets minute. So yeah.
Especially when I do this.
Yeah.
It looks like the M5 computer. M5. So
yeah. Yes. It looks like any of the old computers that you and I grew up with, where there's the flashing lights, everything's moving around. So yeah.
Did I tell you what I'm building?
Which thing?
The PDP 1170.
Oh no, I don't think I heard about the PDP 1170.
Yeah, they've made a show you how fast technology has increased. Back in the mid 70s, they introduced the PDP 1170 by Digital Equipment Corporation. Right. It was a $30,000 computer in its small size. In its larger sizes, it was like $200,000-300,000 in 70s dollars. So it's very expensive. And the guy came out with a front panel replica. It's a 2/3 scale front panel replica.
Okay.
It's got all the little switches on it. It's got all the little LEDs, got the little twist lock, got the buttons on the side. And it is actually faster than the original deck PDP 1170.
Yeah.
And it is running a Raspberry Pi 3. It's running a Raspberry Pi 3.
A Pi 3, no less. Wow.
Yeah. I've got a Pi 4 in mine, but a Pi 3 will actually get you triple the speed of the original. Emulated.
Yeah, right. It's an emulator that runs under Linux, yeah.
And this thing, for those who are not, you know, out of the Jurassic era, these things would take up buildings or
Right.
floors.
Yeah.
A deck VAX PDP 11 VAX 1170 would take up floors of an office building, and a
Yep.
standard PDP 1170 that was tricked out would take up, 5 or 6,000 square feet. And now I can put it in the driver's seat next to my car, and I can haul that big ass computer around in my hand.
Yeah.
It's like
Let me get something here real quick, since I'm tiny. This is my Raspberry Pi 4. Tricked out with everything. This is what he's talking about. Some of this actually smaller than this to run a computer that was once state of the art and filled a warehouse. Amazing.
But the DEC PDP 1170 was the first professional job I had computing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's like, okay, I want that. It's funny. The plexiglass and the switches and the circuit boards and the LEDs and the 3 ICs and the socket cost, I think it was 5 times more than the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Exactly the opposite of how it would have been back there,
Right.
The guy had the front case injection molded, so it was very expensive. It's the same color, it's the same feel, the little toggle switches on the front, red and blue,
Yeah, one of my great regrets in IT is that we don't have all the blinking lights and flashing computer screens that we dreamed of at one point. Now it's all like this.
We can't have that, Bill. It would distract the millennials from their telephones. One thing that I did notice, everybody's been doing this pickup at like Walmart, and you go to Lowe's Food and you pick up, you go to Walgreens and you pick up. And it finally hit me. It's like we are really, really being set up for a very interesting time. How long is it going to be? How long is it going to be before I go on my computer and I say, I want to pick up my prescription at CVS? And they say, are you part of our instant delivery program?
Right.
And you go, why, yes, I do. I am. I have a thing out there that says, enter the delivery code. And you put the delivery code in. And within like 4 minutes, the drone comes and drops it in your front yard.
Yeah.
I mean, we are really close to that.
Yes, we are. Yes.
I know Amazon was talking about it at one point, but now that everyone has adopted the curbside pickup model,
right,
it's one step to autonomous delivery.
Well, I mean, I get groceries from my mother, not for myself, although I'm constantly this close to pulling the trigger on it. But I mean, I order those online and they deliver them for me as is.
Yeah.
We get to a point where they're doing drones.
Well, and then go one step further than that. Let's say we have autonomous delivery vehicles and autonomous home robotics.
Yeah.
So the sofa comes in the back of the tractor trailer truck. They back in. Your autonomous home robot goes out, grabs the sofa, comes back in. They blink at each other's eyes, and it's like, okay, it was received. Cool.
Yeah.
And there's no humans involved at all, other than the initial, I want this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really amazing when you start thinking about
definitely think we're heading in that
stuff
direction.
Go.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's amazing. What is it that Q said about the Borg in Star Trek? It's filled with wonders to satiate your desires, both subtle and grotesque, and terrors to chill your soul. Can go both ways, and it probably will go both ways. It's Schrodinger's future.
So. Technology always does go both ways.
Yep. The main driver of the internet was pornography.
Yep. It absolutely
So,
was.
so you can
The
actually
internet
say
is for
that.
porn, as they said on that
Mhm.
Sesame Street parody, Avenue Q. Whole
Now
song about it. The
here's
internet is for
a one to
porn.
boil your noodle.
I'm sorry?
Here's a one to boil your noodle. Okay, the
Mm-hmm.
internet was built by porn.
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin was built by money laundering.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Initially, it absolutely was. Yeah. Yeah.
oh boy, fun, fun, fun.
Well, let me go
Oh,
into a few of my questions here. I don't know how long you have here.
B42, 128 squared, and the color turquoise.
I'm sorry?
I was answering the questions really quick. I'll come up
Oh,
with my new
okay.
tagline. I've come up with my new tagline.
What's that?
I am an INTJ Sigma male seeking alpha. Alpha, for those who don't know, is a financial term that means optimal returns. So,
Let me go back and look at my comments here because I had some comments. Yeah,
get
Johnny
this guy
Arcade was
off the
saying
air.
everybody has money to burn this year, busy with your remodeling business. Yeah, because I mean, they didn't go a lot of places. I mean, restaurants around us were basically shut down, or were taking a fraction of the number of people that they had. So people were saving money, no question about that. Who gets the M1 muddy? Johnny Arcade says. I
That's
believe
a
the
fun
answer to
one.
that is everybody.
No, that's
No?
not correct.
Oh,
You have to understand how money is created. The Congress does an appropriation that creates treasury bills or treasury bonds. Those treasury bonds are then sold off to people who want to acquire our debt. They get paid an interest rate on that. The money that is collected from that goes into printing more money. And so then basically money equals debt.
right.
Now, who has it? The Federal Reserve does. It's on their balance sheet.
Hmm.
And since they are the central bank, when banks need money to make loans, they go to the Fed. And when you need a loan, you go to the bank. And then through the magic, it's the black magic of fractional reserve banking, if they get $100, they can lend out 900. I think
Right.
it's 9 to 1 now, isn't it?
I don't know. It's
Um,
ridiculously high.
so who gets it is the Fed.
Okay.
Who loses their value? It's everybody.
Everybody.
So that's a value transfer from everybody to the Fed when you get down to it.
Yeah. In libertarian speak, we tend to like to call this as a taxation on the poor.
It's a taxation on every dollar in existence.
Right. But I mean, when you get to the poor, it really hurts them.
Oh yeah.
Shadow Man's talking about dabbling a bit in crypto. I think that's a good idea.
Do not buy Doge for $5,000.
Yeah.
That is financial advice.
Dalton says you have about 200K of debt, including house and student debt. The upside is I should be able to pay that off in 5 years.
The upside is you'll be able to pay that off in a year and a half if you're
Yeah.
real lucky.
Yeah, because you'll be
But
having to
you
have
don't
more money to make ends meet, and they can't
you
change the terms of that loan.
you don't want to pay it off early though. You want to let it run because the longer you let it run, the interest that they are getting is so far below the inflation rate and the equity that you have, it actually ends up paying you back. The numbers are bizarre,
Huh.
but you will actually end up paying a negative interest rate if you were to buy right now and the economy goes like we're saying it's going to go.
Right.
You'll pay a negative interest rate.
Negative interest rate. Boggles the mind. Johnny
Remember,
Arcade says no bad time for crypto if you aren't shorting. You know,
okay,
and
number one, never short a bull market ever. It will come back and sting you. And if you're dumb enough to short with leverage, you're going to get wrecked. Now, I have shorted a bull market before, successfully, several times. But every time you do, all of a sudden what happens is your stomach goes up into your brain and engulfs it. And you can't think of anything else but that until you close that short.
Yeah.
That's me. I've heard it's other people. It's easier just to play the upside and play the single sell on the down. It's less stress. You keep your brain.
Shadow Man joking he's going to short Viacom CBS. Well, I think they're in
Okay.
trouble.
That's a good bet.
Yeah.
Wait. If you're going to do that, wait until just before the premiere of the next Star Trek series. You have to time this one carefully.
Right before the premiere of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, I guess.
That's the next one, yeah.
So,
if you want to short Disney, it's short. This is all financial jokes. It's short right before the premiere of any movie with what's the girl? The girl that played Captain Marvel, Brie Larson.
Oh, Brie Larson.
Yeah. Sci-fi finance joke.
Yeah.
Sci-finance joke. Yeah.
Don't tell that to her followers. Not on Twitter. Let's
Actually,
see.
it's not that uncommon of a joke.
I know. Jenny Arcade saying consumer confidence soars when you retouch your previous ATH.
Oh, yes. And that's the one thing. You really have to watch out for the public reaction to things.
Right.
And you have to be very knowledgeable that it is not price that drives the reaction, it's psychology.
Right.
Why do people get excited? It's because they got in too late. These are not people you should be following.
Right.
You need to be following the people who got in early.
Right.
And bought during the long twilight struggle. They're the ones who did it right. As I just showed you, who were DCAing in and
right.
doing it in a rational way, you can make, you can 4x your gains as the market goes down 80%.
Right.
Think about it.
Yeah.
And then you buy again. And now with the advent of different sectors in the Ethereum chain, you basically have all of your bank services that you can do in a decentralized way. No more banks. Oh, thank God. I can put money in there, I can put crypto in there, and I can yield farm it. I can lend it out and make incredible rates.
I mean, you mentioned that the last couple of times you were on, that you tested making a loan in such a way that you made money back on it.
Actually, I took out a loan.
Right. You took out the loan. And
there's this thing called a flash loan, and there's a technique called arbitrage. Arbitrage is finding a discrepancy in pricing between two exchanges and leveraging it. So let's say Bitcoin is at, let's not say Bitcoin because I don't want to jinx it. Let's say Ethereum is at $3,000 on one exchange and $3,100 on another exchange. If I trade one share of Ethereum, I can make $100.
Right.
But if I can borrow $10,000, I can do three of them.
And
so I borrow 10,000, buy three on exchange A, sell it on exchange B, and pay back the loan all in one transaction.
Right.
And
over an extraordinarily short period of time.
The interest on the 10,000 was only about like $4.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, nobody was more afraid than I was when I did that. It's like this can't be real, and I've only got $1,000 that I'm willing to risk, and I'm putting my ass on the line for 10.
Right.
If this doesn't work. So, but no, it actually worked. Once again, stomach, enveloping the head. But yeah, but you can do loans. You can do yield farming. You can do direct loans. So you find people with good reputations that for paying back.
Right.
And people get really bad reputations really quickly if they try not to. And you can get 30, 40, 50, 80, 100+% APYs on that.
Wow.
I mean, would you rather do that or, get 0.08% on your savings account?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just nowhere near going to come close to keeping up with inflation ever.
Nope. Just one caveat: if you do decide to get into this, remember you will be taxed at a capital gains rate. It's best to only it's best to keep your holdings over a year, so you trigger short term. The Biden administration is now talking about a retroactive capital gains tax increase. I'm looking at
Joy.
him and going, "Go away! That's
Yeah.
never going to pass. No way in hell."
One certainly hopes that somebody will have brains in there that don't appear to, but
As far as I'm concerned, at this point with this new budget, the Republicans in the Senate should just simply not show up and deny him a quorum.
I don't think it'll matter. I don't
No,
think anybody
they
cares
can't.
about the
They-
quorum anymore.
They can't start without a quorum. Sergeant at Arms won't allow it.
Well, see if
But-
that actually bears fruit. These guys pay no attention to what's constitutionally required anyway. So,
I hate to say it, but you're right.
over on my questions here, what happened to all the Bitcoin that was confiscated by the FBI, CIA from traffickers when Silk Road was taken down? I don't know the answer to that.
It becomes the property of the government.
Right. Yeah.
And I will lay money down that within 5 years you will see a city, county, state, and maybe even a national government starting to invest in Bitcoin in order to offset the inflationary strategies of
Right.
a bigger government.
And what it does to their spending because of
Yeah.
the inflation. Yeah.
And when sovereign funds start coming in, oh, now you've got a real reserve currency.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no place to go but up at that point. So,
Let me look here real quick.
but no, it belongs to the government that seized it. If they can figure out who was defrauded, which they
Right.
put an incredible amount of time and effort, incredible, of course, in this case, meaning incredibly small, figuring that out because they were doing illegal things. So why should we help them?
And rather stupidly from my perspective as well.
And I believe, I don't know if this is true. I heard it. I've read something like it in an actual, legitimate law source.
Mm-hmm.
But anytime they get an asset, and Bitcoin is an asset, I've heard that they are required by law to convert it to dollars.
Really?
And I'm wondering who was on the other end of that deal.
Well,
I mean, they
somebody
can't-
passed a
they-
law who knows nothing about Bitcoin.
Yeah, they can't go to First National Bank on the corner and
Right.
say, "We have $17 billion in crypto. Can you take it?" No. Yeah. Maybe Michael Saylor did it. I don't know. Elon Musk did it. He paid for it.
Yeah,
So-
there you go. A couple of others here. Shadowman been buying Viacom CBS stock, Viacom A at 38 to 42 per share. Almost certain they will be sold this year, but not to whom. Oh, he's going to look up Viacom.
I'm just seeing. That's not a bad chart. Obviously, we had a problem here right in the middle of the pandemic.
Right.
That's not a bad chart at all. That's really a fairly decent chart right now. This, come on. Oh, I'm on a day mode. No wonder. Okay, sorry. This. Oh, wait. There we go. I knew there had to be something out there hiding.
Yeah.
What caused this? Was this a bad earnings report?
I think so, yeah. They had one fairly recently that showed they just tanked like that.
Okay, let me revise what I said. This is a good chart. This, meh. It's not a bad chart because, I mean, at least held a little bit of resistance there.
Yeah.
But got a lot of chop here. This must be a heavy support resistance zone. Or wait a minute, maybe that's the audience reaction graph to the first episode of Star Trek Discovery. That's what it is. that's good. No, that's bad. No, that's good.
Well,
Yeah, it's,
I have a hard time telling exact because, of course, they don't publish any real numbers about the shows or how well they're doing or not.
yeah.
So I have a hard time figuring out whether there's any actual correlation between their stock prices and any of their shows.
They're so diversified. There's really not.
Yeah.
Yeah. But God, I feel like Jim Cramer here. All I need is a soundboard. Bye. Sell.
Well, it has been about an hour and a half with you, Marshall. I know for a fact I'll be pulling this out as a clip and putting it over on BitChute, so have your friend feel free to go over and look at it.
Oh, okay. That's nice. Don't forget, the Mugatu of markets is here.
Yes, he is. The Mugatu of everything is here.
I haven't seen the Mugatu picture, and I can't see it. Wait, actually, I can see it. I can just go to it right now.
Yeah,
You're going to see me see it.
I sent it over to you. I haven't. I thought about putting it up, but because of all the stuff that you're showing, oh, you can see it here. Yes.
Yeah,
if you go into the chat, no, it's not. It's not there. I sent it to you in chat. In what am I trying to say? Well, I'll tell you what. I'll just build a quick card for it so you can see it.
Oh, I thought you had it. No problem.
No, we got infinite regression there. However, hang on a second.
I love this.
Watch the bandwidth go to hell.
Cryptocurrency. There we go.
Oh,
that's Coin Market
Cap.
Cap.
A scene for it real quick.
Oh no, I've already cleared.
Oh, all right. But well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll do this.
You're gonna make me work again, I tell you.
No. I'm just gonna add a quick picture. Sorry. But I'll let you see the thing this way. I wasn't sure, just for my viewers, I wasn't entirely certain whether I'd be having Marshall on with video or not. Fortunately, we were. And we'll fit that to screen and drop you behind the cam. That was my, if you go and look at the stream now, that was what I was thinking about having for you. This is a male Mugatu. I took this off of Star Trek Online. Somebody had done up a Mugatu for Star Trek Online where they had a male, a female, and a child one. The female one, it turns out, is the one we've actually seen in an episode. And, of course, they made him look a little bit different and not quite like, somebody in a costume. Oops. Just lost my hair. So, that's what you would be there.
That is impressive. I like the horn. He is a handsome devil. So here's a Star Trek trivia question for you, oh master of Star Trek trivia.
Uh-oh.
Who was the actor inside the Mugatu uniform or costume?
Was it Hua Chang?
Nope.
Oh, who was it?
The same guy who played the Horda.
I thought that was Hua Chang.
No, Janos Prohaska.
Oh, okay.
Now,
all right. I learned something new every day.
Janos Prohaska, in the credits for that episode, was not given the name of Mugatu. It was something else.
Gumato, yeah. Yeah. Because Mugatu occurred because DeForest Kelley flubbed that name.
Couldn't pronounce it.
Yeah.
Neither could Shatner.
Yeah. Oh, really? I didn't know that, Shatner.
And it's actually Mugato. Everybody on the planet calls it Mugatu. But that's because they kept mispronouncing the thing that they couldn't pronounce, so changed it so they could, but they still couldn't.
Yep.
They really messed us up.
We got this cool thing anyway, this bitty thing. Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you go then, Marshall, because it has been about an hour and a half with you. I certainly appreciate you taking all the time to talk to me and everything and talk to my viewers. Again, I know for other reasons, might be useful for people to see this, so I will be taking it out as a clip. It'll be on It'll be on YouTube, Facebook, and BitChute. So,
Where it will be seen by no one.
oh, hard to say.
Okay, 3.
Well, we'll see. I get a lot better views over on BitChute than I
Order
do
of
anywhere
magnitude,
else.
30.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it's
It is hard to
amazing.
create a channel. It is hard to create a channel.
Yeah. Anyhow, appreciate you being on. As always, awesome. And as always, you are credited forever in my end credits. So thank you very much.
You have a good one, Bill. Talk to the rest of you later. I'm not going to be able to get on the chat. So
Yep.
I will see you all next week.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Marshall.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye. Okay. I can take that out of my ear and stop fiddling with it. Move a couple of windows around here. That one was positioned in such a spot that it looked like I was at least sort of looking at it from time to time. So I'll move things around so that they're where I expect them to be. All right. Shadow Man, thanks, Marshall. Yes, absolutely. T is sticking. Not sure what you mean by the T sticking, but let me shut down a couple of other things I've got going on here in my. I forgot to turn off my BitTorrents, which is eating up bandwidth, and I have my live producer that I probably need to keep up, and the other ones I don't. So many windows. One of these days I'm going to do a picture of it because I have windows here, windows there, windows there, windows there. It's amazing. The number of windows that I have to do what I want to do. Okay, so let me get back to one of my other topics here. The meat processing plant hack. Yes, Hanks or thanks. There we go. Oh, that's what you're saying. Okay, I missed it. Too many things to move around on my screen. So let me talk about the meat processing plant hack that occurred this week. What you have to understand is, like the one that was for the oil company, when you look at it, what actually was hacked was internal networks that were not part of the command and control system for the pipeline, and this was not really for any type of command and control or automation for the beef processing plants. However, they were doing what I would do under those circumstances as somebody who has a background in IT security. They were doing exactly what I would do under those circumstances, which is they were doing their due diligence. In terms of how many monitors I have a big 42-inch that darn near fills a huge chunk of my field of view that the vast majority of my windows are on. Then I have a couple of others down here on my laptop, and of course I have my secondary backup monitor if things go weird on me. So anyhow, what was actually happening is they'd gotten into stuff that was bad to get into, no question about that. But they hadn't actually gotten into anything that would have actually interrupted any of their core business operations. It probably interrupted their financials. Really, God knows what they got into. But the thing is, if you're going to have a breach like that, and you're going to say, okay, you look at it and you say, oh my God, we just had a breach, shut it all down, turn things off, yank the power out of switches and routers so that we're not, worrying about anybody else getting in. And once we've done the triage, once we know what has happened and we've done the analysis, then we can start to bring things back up. And that's what happened in both of these cases. The meat processing plant stuff, again, it wasn't the meat processing plant per se. It was the company that ran this. And unfortunately, every time that you get something like this, any time that you get something like this, you have the press blowing it entirely out of proportion. You have to remember that nothing you see in the press is real. Nothing. And they have no scientific training. They have no IT background. They are propagandists, pure and simple, and they will jump to conclusions. They won't understand the situation. Hell, I had Ben Swan shortly after the oil company started production back up, saying it wasn't the hack that brought down the oil company, it was the company itself. And my response was, well, yeah, of course it was. you're doing your due diligence. You're not just going, oh, well, we hope they haven't gotten into this other stuff. You go, whoa, hold on, put the brakes. We got to stop some stuff, make sure everything's okay and all that. So they were hit with this ransomware, and it didn't take them long to get back up in terms of their production. It is still, however, an incredibly stupid thing to happen. I have never, ever, ever worked for a company that, and I made these systems lots of times myself, stuff that had to open to the outside world in some place, and typically that's just a website. Or you have remote, workers, and you have to set up an infrastructure for that, but that is all very encrypted. So, and it's not really something that's easy to decrypt if you're doing it really right. The decryption key, that somebody uses to log in every time is actually a key card that generates a random new, password to get in, or it's a similar application on your phone that generates something random. It isn't something that someone who is coming from the outside world should be able to get into. That, to me, represents an extraordinary level of incompetence. Just really incompetent. For them to be able to get in at all is incredibly incompetent. Drop of Truth on YouTube is asking, is remote access to the computers of these large corporations allowable so corporate HQ and government can monitor them? I don't know about these particular ones, but for the most part, yeah, those are some of the apps you're talking about there that generate these keys. For the most part, no. Anytime that I have worked for any company, large, small, or otherwise, because I've worked for some large banks, I have worked for some very large insurance companies. I've worked for companies whose businesses were the front end of their internet that connected up to the back end. And if you're doing it right, there's really no way for anybody to get in. And if you want to have some level of interesting fun with them, you set up what's called a honeypot, something that they could conceivably get into that looks real, that will allow you to see what's happening and what they're doing. But in terms of these remote access and things like that, no, those are largely just for people who work for the company. The federal government doesn't really have to do anything aside from come to you and depending on who you are. I mean, like the Federal Trade Commission, the FDIC, those are guys who monitor banks and stuff like that. When I worked for a large bank, they would show up every quarter and do sit down and go through and do an audit of you. Bank I worked for got away with lying through their ass most of the time, but they would do audits and stuff like that. It's really not for that type of monitoring. For that type of monitoring, what you get are what are called NSA cages. They sit inside of certain types of data centers that watch the traffic going back and forth. But the encrypted things, the access to the internal networks, isn't really for that. It is for remote workers and things like that. It's not. Or if it's a website, it's a public website that the back end of which is heavily, heavily guarded. That, even if somebody were, and I worked for a company where a flaw was discovered in Microsoft's Internet Information Service, which is one of the web servers that you can use out there. Flaw was discovered that would have allowed people to come in and do what's called a SQL injection. It's a little complicated. But even then, how it would connect up to the back end was such that, okay, they're going to mess up the front end a little bit in terms of what's seen in the front end, but they're not really going to mess up all of the back end, which is 10 times the size of what you see when you're looking at the front end. Shadowman, the government cannot demand access to any live connection to any company. You're working for a multi-billion-dollar media corp right now. Exactly, yeah. And we would know them, yes. I can't talk about, I could probably name some, but because my NDAs are all over, but I'm not going to. Shadowman says, automation software for processing machines is usually contained in the machine. Only the control interface is vulnerable. Yeah. And those really shouldn't be connected up to any kind of network that is going to be reachable from the outside world. It really shouldn't. Drop 2 says, company you work for still uses Windows CE 6.0. You can stop laughing now. Oh man, I'm going to talk about it in a bit, but I did work for a company that manufactured at the time over 50% of the Girl Scout cookies in the world. And it had a very, very cool robot. Now, this was about circa 2004, 2003. And they still, at that time they had Windows Server and they had Windows like 98 for the desktop, and Windows Server for everything else. And this was the coolest robot I've ever seen. This thing had like 26 or 36 arms, right? And the cookies would come out of the ovens, and these things had little suction cups on the end. And the cookies were coming out of the oven. They had frosting on top, and so the frosting was drying as it was coming out, or just barely dried. And these little suction cups knew how to go down and grab a cookie so lightly that they would not leave an imprint on the cookie, and then put them into one of those plastic trays, that goes inside the wrapping. It was fantastic to watch this thing, because all of these arms are just constantly moving, and you're like, oh my God, this is cool. The control interface for the thing was Windows 98. I was floored, because I was like, I had to nominally support it. I mean, I wasn't really supporting it. The company supported it, but they had bought this thing from a company out of Germany who only operated during their business hours. So even if you're calling tech support, you're like, okay, I guess I'm going to be here at 2 a.m. so I can talk to these guys. So they would take me out. The thing would break. They'd take me out to show it to me, and I would look at it and I go, I have no idea what this is doing. All I can see is Windows 98 is stupid. Let's see. Shadowman says, and only if it has TCP/IP connection that can be reached remotely. Yeah, that particular device was not actually on our network at all. That would have been completely insulated. It didn't even have a cable running to it from our network. It was totally insulated. We didn't have anything to do with that. Drop 2 says 8 and 16-bit works fine for machines. Yes, but when you're putting in a Windows interface like that, this was 2004, 2003, and I was looking at this going, why isn't this on Windows Server? But hey, whatever. Anyhow, so this wasn't as big a deal as you think, but it was exceptionally stupid. Just like the oil company, getting into these networks at all should have been impossible. Whatever networks they were in, and my guess is it was some of their financials or local area network stuff, it just shouldn't have been possible. And it reeks of incredible incompetence. So that said, I think the real problem, Shadowman says we can talk about the meat shortages happening because of computer hack. The MSM is already talking about coming shortages, but it makes no sense. Well, like I say, the press has absolutely no experience with this whatsoever. They are totally scientifically illiterate. They are totally computer illiterate. They hear there's a hack on this company. They go, oh, there's a giant hack on this company. They had to shut everything down. Meat prices are going to go up. There's going to be a giant shortage. And then like the day later, they're back up and running, which is what happened in this case. It was about 24 hours. Well, okay, that's going to impact it for a little bit, but not for very long. Anything that's already in the pipeline coming out of those is still going to be delivered. It's going to put them behind, but not that long. But the press doesn't know anything about IT. So when they read they got hacked, they said, oh, it's all screwed up. Everything's going to be screwed up. And it really wasn't. The increase in the price that you're going to see in meat is a function of that inflation that we were talking about with Marshall. There's going to be increases in the price of meat. There's no question about that. But in terms of it's some giant problem, no, there really isn't. Drop 2 says, meat shortage, time to stock up on some Spam. Yes, Spam in the place where I live, ham and pork. If you don't know the song, it's from Weird Al Yankovic. Look up his song Spam. It's very funny. But the real problem with this is the same one that they had with the oil company. The real problem is you have what are functional monopolies. This company was responsible for an enormous number of different meat packing plants worldwide. If they were not a super powerful multinational corporation, this would not have been a problem because they wouldn't be shutting down multiple plants all over the world. If it was a smaller one, if a smaller company only controlled a few packing plants, then A, you'd have competition and I bet the prices would go down. But B, they would not be all vulnerable to a central hack. It is a problem of allowing a multinational corporation to have complete control over an enormous amount of infrastructure. Ultimately, this falls back on the fact that in the United States and most of the rest of the world, corporations are recognized for legal purposes as an individual, right? This alleviates any issues with having, who is responsible for poor business decisions. It makes it more risky if you want to invest in those businesses. But when you treat a corporation as an individual, then the individual can get larger and larger and larger, and you create these monopolies. If the United States federal government was doing its job, I think you could very easily make a case that this is a near monopoly and should be broken up under federal law. And I would have no problem with that. My real thing is I would like to see that protection of them being an individual, being treated as an individual, taken away. I think that's wrong. You should never treat a group of people as an individual, whether it's a corporation or somebody else. You shouldn't treat them legally as an individual. There are people who are the CEOs, the presidents, people like that, the board of directors. They are responsible for those companies. And if they make stupid mistakes, they should be allowed to be sued, right? You don't just sue the company. They throw out, a $1 billion a year company. They throw out $50,000 in a fine. Who cares? It's not hurting them. It's not going to cause them to change any of their business practices. When you break them up into smaller companies and you say you are responsible for your company, this group of people are no longer an individual. I think then you will solve these problems. As long as we allow these huge multinational corporations to have influence over an enormous amount of goods and services, it's going to be problematic. Let's see. Take a look here. Shadowman says Hearst Ranches is only 3 hours away. You can rent a van, buy some coolers, and come back with half a cow and steaks, and will never once need a computer for the transaction. Good for you. Very few places can say that. I think in my own case, my family still has some beef. If we wanted to go out there and slaughter it ourselves and carve it up, yeah, we could probably do the same thing. But that's very unusual. Most people don't have that option. Dropper 2 says meat has just increased price by about 15% in Australia recently. That's more to do with the hike in petrol costs. Could well be. I can't speak to Australia specifically. You'd have more idea about that than I do. Dropper 2 says you can do the same, Shadow Man. There's an abattoir about an hour away. Good for you guys. Shadowman says 3 1-inch steak ribeyes cost $52 in the market right now. 2 weeks ago, it was $36. Yes, we're seeing very similar things in the U.S., and it's going to get worse. As we talked with Marshall, that inflation rate is going to skyrocket, and there's really nothing that can be done about it. 100% agree, Shadowman says. Thank you. Thank you very much. One of the things that came up on Twitter, and I think that it's worth mentioning, and Shadow Man, you can feel free to either agree or disagree with me. Another thing about this is that my experience working for various different companies has taught me that at least the overwhelming majority of companies now, they are IT companies whether they know it or not. When you get into, and let's just use the food supply chain for beef because it's one that I'm familiar with. You get out to my family's ranch land, which is where it all starts, on what's called a cow-calf operation. That's where somebody is raising cattle to be sold. Well, you get out there, and when it comes time, during the summer, and during spring, summer, most of fall, you've got grass. It's a natural prairie. You can feed them prairie grass, just let them graze. Well, then it comes time for cold weather and the grass starts to go away, or you can't do it anymore. And if you're smart, if you have a large enough spread, what you will do is you will cut down grass to be used for hay, and that will to some extent carry you through the winter. But it won't completely carry you through the winter. You also need to have feed grain. Well, to get feed grain there, it's not like you cannot grow feed grain there. You can't. It's just not possible. The ground is such that about the only thing it'll grow is prairie grass and a few other minor crops, alfalfa. But you can't grow corn, for feed grain. You can't grow, wheat or anything like that. So in order to get your feed grain, you have to buy it from somebody. Well, you can't just go to somebody nearby or, 1,000 miles away who's buying it. You buy it from a feed company. Well, in order to get this stuff to you, that feed company has to have a fair amount of IT infrastructure that allows them to track how much they're getting in, track how much they're selling, track what what the amounts they're selling for, raise lower prices. I mean, it's not like they go out with a sign. They're selling to God knows how many different ranchers. So you're going to have IT involved in that end of it. Then you get the way that it's delivered out there. Well, it's delivered out there typically by some very large truck belonging to a company. The company probably has a contract with the grain company or is an independent contractor. Well, he's got also IT involved in that. Not just in terms of all the finances and stuff that need to track all of that, but also in the truck itself. Any car or truck made within the last 30 or so years has got, onboard computing systems. I've had my Jeep, which is about the simplest damn thing I can think of. My Jeep Wrangler rather. I've had it rendered inoperative by virtue of the onboard computer system saying something was inoperative, that when checked was not actually inoperative. The sensor that was watching it became inoperative. So, you've just got that right inside inside the transport itself, not to mention all of the IT that goes into, deciding, okay, who's going to make this delivery, how much is it going to be for, what are we charging them, and all of that. Let's see. Drop Truth says, how many kilos are 3 ribeye steaks? I have no idea. Roughly 4 pounds for the steaks family pack. Shadowman says, aren't they describing basically ConAgra operations? They may very well be dependent on computer networks because they are a multi-state operation. Yes, again, even if they're not, when the virus started, I happened to talk the last time I was out there a year ago, and by the way, it's looking more and more like I'm going to be heading out there again. When I was out there a year ago, I happened to talk to our relative who actually ranches that land, who has cattle there. And he was telling me, I asked him, what about this problem? Because they shut down several very large meat processing plants because of infections in the meat processing plants. And he said, yeah, it was a problem for a while. But then we had our local plant in Wall that really took over for it. And now they're expanding like crazy, and they can't even meet the demand that we're sending out there. It's not a question of not being able to send it someplace. It's how fast can we get it over to them, and how fast can they expand. And this is just a little place in Wall, South Dakota. That is a sort of diversification I like to see. But even then, they're going to have computing equipment that, I don't know. I sure hope that nobody's connected it up to the internet, or if they probably have on some level. Everybody's got access to the internet. Hopefully they've got a good firewall in place that basically says we allow all traffic out, none in. But I don't know. But that's the sort of diversification that I would like to see, going away from ConAgra and people like that and over to smaller, more local concerns. I think that would be good because it would be good for competition. It would help drive the price down with the quality up. And at the same time, you're not having to worry about one central location getting hacked and fracking up God knows what. If somebody hacks that place in Wall, Well, what's going to happen is they're going to move over to Mitchell or something like that, right? They're just going to find the next nearest meat processing plant. In this case, in point of fact, you might call that one a slaughterhouse. It was very small the last time I saw it. I know it must have grown now. But they've got IT. They had IT even before that, just for, because I would drive stuff off there from time to time. Actually, when I went hunting, I would usually take it to this place in near Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is way on the other side of the state, because I like the way that they process deer meat better. But I had occasionally dropped one off there, and they didn't write things up by hand. They were doing it all, weighing the beef, doing up, cutting it up, how it's going to be cut up, weighing all that, deciding, how much it's going to cost me. All of it was computerized, every last bit of it. Let's see. Independent ranchers being less reliant on computers. No, they're becoming more and more reliant on them. It turns out that just makes it easier for them to track individual animals. It makes it easier for them to, keep track of various cattle pastures where they have the cows and how that's doing. They're probably a little less dependent on them, and they're connected to the internet via your average, home firewall router. So that's reasonably good. But no, they use computers and stuff in order to manage their herds. And the larger a spread that you get, the more animals you get, more livestock you get, the more of that occurs. It's one thing to be able to, manage a herd of several hundred, but it's a totally other thing to manage herds of thousands, tens of thousands, which happens. So the more that you get those things, the harder it becomes to manage them, and computers become more important. I have watched as ranchers get more computerized over time. And even so, they also have the issue of the heavy equipment that they have, which, if it was built in the last 30 years or so, has computerized components. And it was one thing when my grandfather was ranching way back when. He was also essentially an on-site mechanic, and he knew a lot about this heavy equipment, how it worked. And so if something broke, he could probably fix it. Well, today, nobody's got that computing equipment sitting in their house to plug into the onboard computer to find out if there's something wrong with that respect, as opposed to there being a mechanical problem. You have that as well on the mechanical side. Let's see. Shadowman says, are allowed to have cows or chickens on the property. There is no limit in terms of what you can have. It's cattle, because it is a natural prairie. It's about the only thing that'll grow there. What lived there before the cattle were, enormous herds of buffalo. It is just a giant prairie, so it works better to raise cattle there. My grandparents, for a very brief period of time, did have a chicken coop long before I was born, and just got rid of it because it wasn't doing them any good. Personally, it wasn't helping them make things better for them, their life, and also they couldn't sell them. It just wasn't volume enough. It's really only ever cattle out there. There are some people, mostly rich people, who have designs about how we should all be better in terms of the environment, who have gone out there and tried to breed some bison, and that doesn't work very well. The bison are 3 times the size of a fence. And a fence for cattle are 3 times the size of that, and plain old barbed wire doesn't. A bison is a large animal, and regular old barbed wire doesn't stop them. So it used to be that there were a couple of neighboring where the ranch land is, and they eventually figured out that just upkeep on them was more than it was worth. So it's almost exclusively cattle. Oh, and wild turkey. Tons and tons of wild turkey out there. When my grandmother was alive, we were prohibited from shooting the wild turkey. I think maybe we would not be prohibited now as she's passed away. Drop 2 says, Australia exports a great deal of pork to China. Is that also true of the U.S.? I don't know for sure. I assume so. Almost everything that we make is more than adequate to feed the U.S., although we get more imports than you'd imagine. But we send a lot of it off. There's a lot of international trade that we do. Russia is one of them. We have fed Russia since they became communist, before they were the Soviet Union. I like to tell people we could have at any time in the Cold War shut down Russia, caused it to collapse, caused the Soviet Union to die, simply by not trading with them. They could never feed their own country. They still can't, despite the fact that they have some of the best agricultural land in the world. They still can't feed them. If it wasn't for us, they would die. And that was true of the entire Cold War, and I cannot to this day figure out why somebody didn't do that. Just said, that's it. We're not going to feed them. We're going to let them start to starve, and that will cause the whole damn place to collapse. Venison jerky is delicious. Yes, I mean, I've had a lot of different stuff. Venison jerky I like very much. I won't do any hunting out there this year. Maybe I will. That's November, first week in November. So maybe I'll go out there and do that this year. Drop 2 says, Aussie farmers use rather large drones to help monitor cattle and sheep here. I don't see that happening where we are, but all of the ranches in that area are not that large a spread. To really consistently make money in South Dakota, you need a very large spread, one such that the weather is different on one part of it than on the other, because you get a lot of dry spells, but you also get periods where you have a lot of rain. So in dry spells, the grass doesn't grow very well. If you have rain, it does. So if you have a large enough spread, that means that you can go, I'm not going to be able to graze over here. I'm going to be able to graze over here and move your cattle from place to place. These spreads are fairly small, and so it's limited by weather and stuff like that, and also very limited in terms of what people have available for capital. Most of the ones out there, my grandparents in particular, I mean, they made ends meet, but that was about all. They tried, but my grandfather tried a number of things to try to make it work better for him, and he just couldn't do it. They were very poor, and that's generally true of what goes on out there. There are some much larger areas that are borders, and stuff like that, but for small ones like that, you don't really, I don't know, maybe now that drones are less expensive. I've kicked around picking up a drone just to go out there and get drone footage. I've only ever seen that valley from 1 or 2 vantage locations. I think it'd be cool to run a drone up there. Anyone wants to go over and look at my support page at sylranch.tv/donate. I have a link to a wish list on Amazon that includes a drone. Feel free to get me that drone. I think that would be awesome to be able to go out there with a drone. Shadowman says, you're glad you got yourself a little freezer. Have it full of meat just because it comes on sale a lot. Yes, I did not see this pandemic coming, so bravo. Yeah. I have had at various times very large ones. My grandparents, one Christmas that I remember, only one, slaughtered an entire cow and carved it among their 5 children. We had more meat than we could deal with for a long time. A decent-sized deer will keep you for a long time. A 150-pound deer will keep you quite a while, actually. Drop 2 says, there's a shop near me, Rock and Roll Roasts, who buy 200 to 250 kilogram combination of boneless pork leg, lamb, and cube roll beef every Thursday, ready for the weekend. Aussies love their meat. Yeah, in reality, so do Americans. It's ridiculous. Anyhow, getting back to this food production thing that I could talk about and where the computerization comes into play. So my grandparents would raise cattle to a certain age and, make sure that they had breeding stock and all that going on. It was a constant sort of in and out. You get an animal that reached a certain age, you would get rid of it, and it would have spent a lot of time, breeding for a number of years before you, sold it off. And then you got the ones that are still breeding, and you got the calves and all of that. So my grandparents would have, were running a cow-calf operation. But nobody likes the taste of beef when it has been grass-fed. It's kind of stringy. It doesn't taste very good. People want to eat cattle that have been grain-fed. So the place that my grandparents would sell them to would be to an auction house. They would take them to an auction house to be sold to a feedlot. And a feedlot's very different from a cow-calf operation. That's where you have just an enormous number of cattle sitting in a relatively enclosed space, eating nothing but grain that is provided by the feedlot. They also smell to high heaven. I used to live downwind of one, and boy, you get used to it. But at first you walk in and go, oh my God, it smells like cow crap for miles and miles around. But after a while, your brain just starts to edit it out. But those guys, both the auction house, they certainly use computing equipment to make sure that their transactions are good. The people who are making the trip, because you got these huge semis filled with cattle, they or their companies are absolutely making use. They have to do things like keep track of weight and things like that, and the number of cattle that they have, and all of those things. They were using computers all the time. Similarly, you get to the auction house. Well, they've got their middleman of transactions, so they're using computing equipment. The bigger the auction house, the more that they're going to be using. And then you get to the feedlot, and God, the number of animals they have, that livestock, they must keep track of it. So they're going to be using a lot of computing equipment as well. Then they sell it via an auction house, again, who's going to be having a lot of computing equipment in order to keep track of all this stuff. They sell it to an auction house, take it to an auction house, sell it. Auction house takes a piece, by the way. And then that's sold off to the meat processing plant, finally. Let's see. Drop 2 says, these drones are about 1.5 meters in diameter. Yes, they're huge, and they can fly for about 2 hours. Their range is many kilometers. Yeah, it's just that, the average person, one of my relatives out there, just an example of how poor they are, 4 years. He had a pair of glasses where this whole, chunk on the side for one of these was totally broken, and he didn't go get it fixed because he couldn't afford it. He just taped it up for years and years and years. The watchword out there, and my grandmother's one, and the one that's come very useful for me in times when I've not had a lot of money: make do or do without. That's the choice that you have. You don't have the money to go and spend all this stuff. You either make do with what you've got, or you do without it. You don't have any choice. So buying a drone is probably an expenditure that would be thought about for a very long time, and you may never get the money to make it. You're barely making it out there. Drop True says, grass-fed beef is quite watery. Grain-fed is delicious. Yes, the market does not want grass-fed beef. They want grain-fed beef. That's why you have that feedlot in the middle. Drop 2 says, Hungry Jack's, Burger King Australia, has stopped advertising their patties as 100% ground beef. Are they adding soy like McDonald's? I have no idea. I never go to any of those places. But the only place that I go to is a place, a chain called Runza here in town. And I almost never go anywhere else. When I do go someplace, there is a chain in the U.S. called Who Hot, which is nominally Chinese food. You walk through a buffet-style thing, getting the meat, whatever you want on top of it, and then they have this round grill. You hand it to the guy, they grill it there in front of you, and you take it back. And I do that because I can then control what is in that meal. It's something that I know I can eat and not screw up my diabetes. And at the same time, I can eat quite a lot of it. Sometimes I go there, if I've been like fasting for my blood work at my doctor's, I'll go there because I'm like, okay, I can just pig out now because I know what I'm eating is good. Drop 2 says, grass-fed beef is actually promoted in Australia. The fools. It's not even a question in the U.S. Nobody deals in grass-fed beef to the public. It's just that simple. Anyhow, then you get into the slaughterhouse. Now, I never worked in a slaughterhouse. I have never had to support them in terms of their IT, so I can't really speak with any, real. I can't really talk to you directly about what goes on in their IT. However, I did, as I mentioned, work once for a company that produced over 50% of the Girl Scout cookies in the world. And it's not a one-to-one type of comparison, but I think it has to have similarities. So let me explain that company to you. That company had 8 manufacturing lines that were approximately the length of a football field inside of this gigantic building. 8 of those lines. The first 50 or 75 yards were the ovens, just the ovens alone. Beyond that, you had, doing things like putting on certain types of toppings, frostings, things like that. It depended on what you were doing. If you're making a cookie that's like one of those lemon ones where you have a cookie on the top, cookie on the bottom, lemon stuff in the center. That has a different kind of manufacturing that goes along with it. But at any point, if you go in right to the beginning, right at the top, where you're dumping in this mountain of ingredients that's going to be, dealt with internally on this the front end of an oven, right? Even right there, you have a number of command and control computers that are going to be dealing with just that. And I know about these because any time that we had a number of computers, any computer, anywhere along the production line fail, then that production line halted. We were losing money or potentially running behind on some type of order. And so, it was always under pressure, get that thing fixed. And they'd break more frequently than you'd think because it was, no matter how much we protected them physically, they would still get bumped, battered, banged around, and ultimately fail in some way that we'd have to fix. So there'd be multiple computers right on the front end that dealt with the command and control of that piece of it. There were pieces along, because they would be stationed right alongside of these ovens. There was pieces along the side of the ovens that were then command and control for internal temperature, for the movement of the line going across. Some odd things, like if you have a certain type of cookie, you can't have it laying on just a conveyor belt because that will screw up what the cookie looks like. So the conveyor belt actually vibrates in such a way that the cookie is essentially floating. So there was command for all of that. Then it might get out into a place where, it was getting frosting and stuff like that. What you have to really remember about a place like this is, and I assume it must be similar for meat as well, everything about the cookie was engineered down to the gram. Just absolutely engineered. I visited once this company's, what is it? Their where they were deciding, what kind of way should they, what were the best kinds of, ingredients to put in a cookie? What tastes good? It was a research and development. And once they figured out an actual recipe that they could give out to the cookie company, then the cookie company would use that recipe down to the gram. And they would have cookies that had to be exactly the same size, exactly the same amount of filling, exactly the same amount of frosting or chocolate covering or whatever you had. And if it didn't meet up to that specification, because once it came out, apparently all done, it would go through a QA process, an automated QA process. All of this is automated. It would go through an automated QA process that would then decide, is this cookie any good? And if that cookie deviated in the slightest from the specifications that it was supposed to have according to the actual, recipe that they'd made up, that cookie would go be dumped. It would become what we called hog feed. And that really just meant, so you can't take, those cookies were perfectly fine. perfectly edible. But somewhere along the line, you had tops of the cookies on those sandwich cookies might not be quite exactly lined up properly, and they wouldn't pass the QA, the quality assurance. They would go straight into these bins that we called hog feed. And that's because, despite the fact that they were perfectly good, and you could have, say, fed them to starving people around the world, you couldn't. It was legally impossible. You had to throw them away. The only thing that they would do with those, if they couldn't recover some of the ingredients, which sometimes they could, I mean, you wouldn't believe it. Those carts that they have at hotels where the maids throw all of the, used bedding and stuff into before they remake it, double the size of one of those. And in any given day, 50, 75, maybe 100 of those would accumulate, and they all had to be destroyed. Now, some of them we could, in fact, sell off as used for certain types of by certain types of livestock, which is why it was called hog feed. But I mean, you'd get these things off the line, they'd say hog feed, and if you got more than a few of them in a row, they'd say, okay, let's shut down the line, let's see what the hell the problem is that's constantly creating these cookies that we can't use. And all of that automated. Computers out there. I know, because I had to deal with the damn things every single day. And they were on networks. They were on our networks internally, oftentimes on what's called a VLAN, a virtual LAN, so that we could identify any given one of these 8 oven lines. And it was almost never something that we could remotely deal with. You had to walk out there on the floor constantly every day. It was just a question of, okay, what's going to break today? Because it's a large place and a lot of automation. Everything from the beginning to the end was totally automated, and occasionally you got these really weird ones. I did not know this before I started working at that place. There are cookies that require sugar that is more fine-grained than the most fine-grained powdered sugar that you can get. So these cookies, what they would do is they had a room called the ballroom, and it was essentially these 2 very, very large cylindrical objects. You would dump in your powdered sugar into these objects, or more. Well, no, they were usually done more or less manually at that time. I don't know if they still are. But you would dump all this into these 2 mixers. And these 2 mixers each had a V8 engine in them. And they would spin and cause all of these little tiny ball bearings inside there to spin around and crush up all of this already powdered sugar into a fine, fine dust. All again controlled by computer. And I know this because this one was always problematic. It didn't matter what vacuum sealed thing we put any computer in there, within 2 months it was dead, because that sugar was so fine grained that it would get through into any crack anywhere. It didn't, you could put the things inside of vacuum chambers. We tried, and it didn't matter. It would still get inside, and they would screw up the computer within a couple of months. We just like, okay, ballroom isn't working again. Get image one of those, get it out there. Just computers all over the place that controlled everything. From the moment you got something in terms of raw materials, to the moment you put them out, all computer controlled. And as I say, we did at one point have this really cool robot that was really fun to watch, because it was picking, it was, again, all these tolerances that you have to meet. Your cookie could not come out having just started being dried with the frosting on top and have an indentation in it. So that's why this robot was picking these things up and putting them in the trays. And it had, I think, 16 arms, and it was just like this. It was just like watching them, and it's just amazing. All of these sensors that they had, and they were just picking these things up and putting them in the trays, all day long, all computer controlled, and not just the command and control system that I didn't know how to deal with if it broke. I was the guy that got to sit there at 2 a.m. and deal with the guys in Germany on it, but also internally. Obviously, you're going to have an enormous, just internally, an enormous amount of equipment that's going to go into doing those things. Let's see. I'll go back here. Drop 2 says, why do most vegans become irritating animal activists? Lost a few friends because of that. The reason that they do, I have a relative who's a vegan for other reasons. It's not just that he has health issues that he has to deal with. This individual thinks that cattle are rational reasoning reasoning beings, similar to humans. This individual would actually like to see cattle vote. And if you've ever spent time on a ranch, you know that cattle are among the stupidest animals on the face of the earth. I find it amusing because I'm like, okay, all right, let's take these thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of head of cattle, and let's say we're going to let them vote. Well, how are you going to know how they vote? Well, I suppose the rancher has to decide. Well, ranchers are pretty conservative people. What if they just decide that all of their, for example, all of their cattle voted for Trump? Utterly ridiculous, but I've seen that before. I know what you're talking about. Hey, Rich Malicha, how you doing? Drop of Truth says, imperfect cookies, potato chips, many other foods are packaged and sent to reject shops, 99-cent store. Not these cookies. No, you could not sell them. By federal law, you were not allowed to sell them, at least not in the United States. You couldn't do it. Couldn't sell them. Not to humans, not anywhere in the world. You had to sell them at best. At best, you had to sell them to, feedlots and stuff. In point of fact, I got pretty fat, and actually that was when I was diagnosed with diabetes, because I could go out to that place and at any time go through any of these giant hog feed things we had laying around and pick up anything I wanted. Any amount of cookies that I wanted, I could eat. Because I didn't care. It wasn't going anyplace. A tiny few ounces here and there. Hell, they could have let everybody in the company, and they did. If you wanted them, you could have them. They could let everybody in the company come along and eat those, and it wouldn't have mattered. Yes, Shadow Man, they'll be targeting fossil fuels, meat, and perhaps gasoline-powered vehicles. The long throw, yes, they will. But I know enough about, as I was saying, talking about the food supply chain here. They'll starve. You have to have diesel equipment at the very least. And here where I live, electric cars are useless. They're great if you live in a major metropolitan area, but it is the height of stupidity to believe that just because you live in a major metro area and an electric car will work for you, that when you come out here and things are hundreds of miles apart, that it will work here. It's dumb. And it certainly won't work on a ranch. You've got to have diesel-powered heavy equipment. Let's see. Drop 2 says, indeed, Shadow Man, and question Marshall's prediction of near instant delivery by drones, self-driving vans. How will they be fueled? Electricity from renewable energy source. Don't make me laugh. I think he's just talking about what is in terms of what would be at least technologically feasible. I've seen stuff coming around that I did not expect to happen. Whether or not that will go down, I don't know. I don't know for sure, but it'll be interesting to watch happen. Drop 2 says the UK has declared no new gasoline or diesel-powered vehicles after 2030. Well, it's a small country. Really? You could take the entirety of the British Isles and fit them inside of Nebraska. And they've got a very large, population density in their cities. I don't know what their farms and stuff look like. They buy a lot of food from us as well. Everybody does. So I don't know if it'll fly for them, but it's stupid regardless. Is that person Hindu? No, the person I'm talking about is not Hindu. They're just extraordinarily ignorant of the reality of the intelligence of the average cow. Shadow Man says, in California, you can't make your own car pass increasingly strict smog checks, and then you have to retire it. Yeah, you drive a 30-year-old Mercedes, and it still passes because you change the catalytic converter. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's California, I've said repeatedly, should be excised from the body politic, at least the parts along the coast that contain those major cities, because they infect the entire rest of the country in a very negative way. If they want to have their own, People's Republic of California, that's fine. Go ahead and secede. Let the entire rest of California become a new state that we'll call Jefferson, just because it's cool. Your Pajero's petrol and LPG, no problems for you. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that will stop me if I don't go out to the ranch is the increasing prices of gas, because that really costs me $300 to $400 to get out there and back just in the gas. It's that far enough away from where I live. So anyhow, you have all of this computerized stuff just to make these cookies. And I assume that there's got to be something very similar with respect to the way meat is made. Beef is, the cows are taken to the processing plant. They're slaughtered there. They are, cut up there. I'm sure that there's got to be something as equally complex as everything I've just described. So then these companies will sell to wholesalers. And the wholesalers, these days tend to also be very large companies, multinational corporations that are de facto monopolies, really shouldn't be allowed to exist. And they'll sell to those guys. And again, you're dealing with, okay, well, we got to get the meat out. We have to know what it weighs. We know how everything. Oh, I should mention, too, any place that manufactures food. Their inventory system is really, really, really precise. Every year, we had to go through a test. It never happened to us, fortunately, but a recall test. We say, okay, this batch of cookies from this serial number on through this serial number, an enormous number, were bad. They have gone out to the grocers already. We need to identify them and pull them all back. We need to identify that they're bad, something's wrong with them, could be poisonous, who knows. But that was a general assumption during these things. We say, okay, we've got poisoned cookies, X number of 1,000 or 100,000 of them that came between these two. We're pretending that they're poisoned and we must get them back. So it was an absolute necessity to be completely 100% up on where every single cookie was going in any given batch so that they could be recalled as required by federal law, and is just a damn good idea. You don't want poisoned cookies going out. And I'm sure they'd have something very similar, if not identical, in terms of, how your beef is made. They must have something that says, okay, for like COVID or something, they probably had some meat recalled because of that. You could say, okay, well, we had this processing plant where we had people on the line who had the virus. Okay, we have to treat those things as tainted. How do we get them back? And the way you get them back is by these computerized systems that are very, very, very detailed in terms of what they have in terms of information. Real quick over on my thing here. Do I remember the gasoline shortage in the USA in the 70s? Yes, I certainly do, yeah. Is it getting back bad in the U.S.? Not really. No. I'm at least not where I live. I'm not seeing any of that. The price of gas is going up, but that should be expected with inflation. Shadow Man says, you happen to live in the state with the lowest unemployment in the entire nation. Yes, it does. However, we have not done ourselves any favors by putting so many businesses out of work in this city alone, over 237 deaths. So many businesses were shut down that probably will never open back up again. Droppers who says, what is the unemployment rate in California? He's going to go, Shadow Man's going to go check. He's from California. So anyway, there's all of this massive amount of IT that goes on in any level of food production, and I'm sure happens at slaughterhouses as well. But, like we did, you could not get to the internet from any of those. Our firewalls and stuff were set up so that those networks were completely walled off. You couldn't even browse the web from one of those things, and any of those control systems. And in point of fact, we locked them down so hard that there were maybe only 2 or 3 applications that would run on any given time. Maybe only one that was the command and control app for any given part of that process. So, that's being smart. That's saying, okay, we're just going to wall that off completely. No one should ever be able to touch it from the outside. Somebody from the inside should never be able to get out. Then it came to things like our local area networks and stuff like that didn't have to do with manufacturing. Well, those had to be able to get out the internet. Sometimes people had to be able to get in. So that introduces some vulnerabilities. But if you're smart, really the risk is pretty low. Anywhere I've worked and I've engineered those things, I can't imagine that what I've heard about the way that these hackers getting in, they could get in. So when we see these hacks, the meat processing ones, the hack on the oil pipeline, this is to me an indication of rank stupidity and total incompetence. It's just not something that should happen. Shadow Man says, drop of truth, it's between 6.6 and 7.1% in California. Good to know. So then you've got this stuff all sold out to wholesalers, who generally tend to be very large corporations. And for something like, beef, they will have a intermediary section that is essentially a very, very, very cold storage facility. Ran across this when I was supporting, it's probably a little different, but similar. I ran across this when I was supporting a cold storage facility that was an intermediary between Wells Blue Bunny and then retailers. So Wells Blue Bunny would put out all of this ice cream that would go into this gigantic warehouse that would then, it would sit there for some period of time before going back out. And that gigantic warehouse was 30 degrees below zero, about 40 feet high. I found myself up there one time. I ain't that great with heights. So what happened there was, by the time I was supporting that, it was very, very automated. Anything that came in on a pallet was read automatically by the time it came in. Nobody had to do anything like inventory. We knew, it would be read automatically coming off a truck, read automatically coming in to be stored, and they knew at any given time what they had and where it was and who it was going to go to and all of that. So I'm certain that something like that also happens with beef. You can't just ship out of the meat processing plant and go straight to the grocery stores. You have to have it at some intermediate storage. So they're going to have all kinds of IT that is going to be, dealing with what's coming in, what's coming out, what's our profit, how much are we making on this. And then you've got it going to the grocery stores. Well, again, all of the transportation in here is also going to be using IT in order to do the transportation. They can't not. You're talking about lots and lots of foodstuffs. You need to know where things are, how much you've got coming in, what you've got going out, how much it costs, whether you're paying drivers and things like that. It's not like you just got a truck driver who's on his own. They're usually from a fleet. So then you get that and you go to the grocery store. Well, I can't tell you the amount of automation that goes on in grocery stores. I mean, for example, they never, at least anywhere I've seen lately, I've never seen anybody doing an inventory because it's not necessary. Each thing coming in has its own barcode that is scanned on the way in and scanned on the way out. So they know at any given time exactly what they have, or very nearly so. So much so that they do what's called just-in-time ordering. They don't keep many foodstuffs back there in storage. They watch the inventory coming in with the computer. It notifies them, hey, we're low on this. Typically, we see this kind of volume of it. We need to go and buy some in order to meet what we typically see for that kind of volume. If they don't do just-in-time ordering, then they risk either not having enough on hand for what their volume is going to be, which means that their customer is going to go to some other store, or they're going to have too much, and in some cases, the food will spoil before they have a chance to be purchased. So all of that's going on in terms of just inside that place. But in addition to that, at the very tail end of it, you're dealing with people when you get into, anywhere that I've gone to grocery store for a long time now. It's always tied up in my having been doing things in education. They can't read, they can't write, they can't perform the most basic math. If they don't know, sliding something across, If it doesn't scan, that's the only way they know how to do it, scanning it. They can't look up the price. If it doesn't scan, almost all the time they'll call a manager over. And at least in my part of the country, they like to be, virtue signaling, and they will hire people who have mental development or disorders. Not to be an a-hole about it, but people that, when I was growing up, you'd call mentally retarded. They'll hire them to be their clerks, because above a certain level of intelligence, even if you're not operating very high, taking this and scanning it is not a complicated thing to do. We are at a point where those jobs can, and often are, at least where I live, done by people who have learning disabilities. People who couldn't make it through high school. Even the ones I saw, they can't read or write or perform the most basic math. But these guys can make it through high school. And they don't even know how to sack something. That's amazing to me. Because when I don't think I ever worked for that, but I've done enough sacking and stuff to know, okay, you don't put the bread on the bottom. Well, these guys don't know that. The stuff comes off scanned in the order it comes off. It goes into the bags in the order it comes off. Sometimes they'll figure out, oh yeah, we can't put the bread on the top. But I have started going through, for the longest time, I was, grouping how I handed things in to be stacked. So you get all the heavy stuff first, and then the stuff that could go on top of the heavy stuff, and then the really breakable stuff last. And they'd still screw it up. I've gotten to the point where I go through the self-checkout just so that I can put things in the bags the way that they should be for being carried out to a car and not damaging anything. This is where we're at. And it's, I think a lot of people are seeing the same thing. They're saying, because we just got to the grocery store I would go to, it's a superstore. And the one that I go to, we've just gotten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I believe it's 6 very new self-checkouts. And they work great. And it's great for me because I can scan this stuff like any idiot. And at the end of it, I can actually, bag the things in a sane way. So, you're not talking about something that requires a heck of a lot of mental energy. And it is, in fact, taken up totally with a computer. Now, when I was way back in the ancient mists of time, when I worked for a convenience store, I had to know, I had to be able to enter a price. I had to be able to do some mental arithmetic, because at the very least, at the end of it, if somebody was giving me cash, I would count back their change. So if they paid 82, 282 for something, and they had a 5, I'd say, okay, 282, 83, 84, 85, 95, $3 and $2 more. I'd count it out. I could read a receipt. If it looked like I'd screwed up, if I'd typed up the wrong thing and they go out and go, wait a minute, I didn't get that, come back in, I would be able to look at it and go, yep, you got the wrong thing, and then manually take it out. And we didn't have any kind of system for keeping track of our inventory, not really. It was imperfect if you were doing it through the cash registers. So we did, in fact, have periods of time where it'd be a bunch of us who'd come in with computers, even at that time, and check our inventory. What did we have in the inventory? Did it match what it said in our cash registers? And if not, what do we need to do to correct it? It's all of this stuff completely computerized, and behind it, an enormous computerized infrastructure. And so let me look over here at my chat, because I've seen come up. Is the USA suffering a drought at this time, Bill? Depends what part of the USA you're talking about. USA is similar in size, I assume. I haven't looked, but similar in area to Australia. Where I'm at, there's no drought. Point of fact, I'm worried if I go out to my family ranch land that it's going to be too wet, that I won't be able to get down this damn large hill that's in the way. It will be too wet. It will be just nothing but mud, and I'll get stuck. I'm worried about that. We had a very, very mild winter, and that was something where everybody was worried, wait a minute, are we going to have enough water? But, and I don't know how that's actually impacted them out there. I think we probably had a little bit less precipitation than we ordinarily would, but, for several nights for the last several weeks, it's been nothing but giant thunderstorms. So it just depends what part of the U.S. you're in. Some of it's more prone to that, some of it's not. I'm sure there's places where it's a big drought, and there's other places where it's not. Let's see. Shadowman saying, yes, drop a tooth. The air in San Francisco metro literally smells of human feces. Wow. I mean, I've heard about that, but I've not been there. Actual air, not just an area. It is not localized, the whole of the air. Yeah, I've heard horrible things about it. I don't want to go back to San Francisco. I have very fond memories of that from my when I'm on my honeymoon. It was one of the places we stayed, and I don't want to go back from what I've heard. Drop 2 says, scary. Shadowman, will that promote a cholera outbreak? Shadowman answering, I don't know, really. I don't really care either. They don't run things there the way that we do down here. The vast majority of liberal laws are conceived in the Bay Area, not in Southern California or Northern California. Yeah, you always have to make a distinction about California. It's an enormous state. And you have the coastal megalopoli and metropolises, the very large ones. And those guys tend to dominate their politics. But in point of fact, it's a small land area. That's why I say if those guys, if they feel like they want to secede and have the rest of California be the new state of Jefferson, I'm perfectly fine with it. Feel free to push that idea, Shadowman. Shadowman says, but they're the richest zone of California. Yes, Middle California has the farmland, the fruit farmers, and wineries, yes. Shadowman tells me, you're about right about those workers, and they do that in California too. I'm sure they do, yeah. I'm sure it isn't just here. It's just I'm saying I know from experience watching it here. In fact, I happen to be driving some hippies. One time. I picked up hitchhiking. And we stopped at one of those places, and they say, wow, do they have a lot of people that are, have learning disabilities? I say, yeah. It's not everyone, but you certainly do see them. And they were like, wow, isn't that wonderful, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that just tells you exactly how computerized this all is. You don't need to have intelligence to do it. Yes, many retail stores use 14 to 17-year-olds because they're cheap. Yes, that's the other thing, too. I mean, it's in the U.S., it's kind of expected. I mean, when the minimum wage came out and they were talking about, raising the minimum wage for people who are like flipping burgers, there was the argument, and it was certainly the one that I would have had. My sister, she spent part of high school working at one of those burger joints. I guess I could name it, Burger King. She spent high school working there, but I mean, almost everybody there was high school age. They was there working part-time to get some money, save up for college and things like that. They didn't need a living wage. Their parents had the living wage. Those jobs are not supposed to be somewhere where you stay forever. They're somewhere where you are for some period of time, saving up some money, and then you take off. The people who stay there forever tend to be the ones who were really good, and they moved into management. They had the smarts and they had the ability to be leaders, and they moved into management. And they ain't making no minimum wage either. They're making a good living. So when they talked about all that, yeah, well, of course they're using, this in our case in the U.S. I don't think there's any place that will allow anybody. I think 16 is the youngest working age. So I mean, 16 to 18-year-olds, even older if they're in college and stuff like that. But you didn't flip burgers forever. That was something you did while you were younger, and then you went on to something else, either a student or, you got a job doing something that was higher up. Even if you stayed at the burger joint, you moved up, you became management. It wasn't supposed to be a profession. It was supposed to be a part-time job, low skilled. You don't get paid that much because of it. Drop 2 says, I had a female friend who lived in Crown Point, Indiana, as a bar waitress. She couldn't survive without her tips. Oh, that's very normal, yes. Waiters and waitresses are not paid very well at all. My first job out of college, my first job ever, I worked for a I worked for basically kind of a restaurant that was run by the state of Nebraska. It was also, it had some catering involved. My first job was a dishwasher. That's what I was, dishwasher. And I got paid minimum wage, which back then was like $3.15 an hour. And so I got paid minimum wage, and it was certainly not a living wage or anything like that. It was money I was putting away to use for something else, like college and stuff like that. My parents were the ones that had the living wage that were going to be paying my way to eat, so like that. I moved up and became a waiter there. And oh my God, discovered that A, my pay had actually dropped, but B, the tips went way up. And while I wasn't getting paid as much, I was still getting a lot of tips that became more than what I was working as a dishwasher. So yeah, that's certainly true in the U.S. The waiters and waitresses don't make a lot. You have to be kind of skilled at dealing with people and stuff like that, so that they'll feel like they're going to tip you a fair amount. Shadowman says, bingo, minimum wage jobs are unskilled. Unskilled jobs should not pay as much as skilled jobs. Make kids shoot for higher goals. Exactly. Drop 2 says, have you seen the Army of the Dead bill? You could cut out the daughter Katie and improve the film tremendously. She's superfluous. I have not seen that. No. Anyway, this is why, any place that I've worked, I've worked on the infrastructure side, and that tends to be a black box to management. They don't know what we do. We don't know why they're paid. They don't know why they're paying for us. And those are the guys that, in the case of these two hacks, are probably to blame. The infrastructure necessary for those hacks to be successful should never have been in place in the first place. So I'm sure that we'll see some firings. I certainly would. But, you're still dealing with a deal where these simply can't operate without computers. And there's very little that I can think of that can. I mean, my TV, obviously the manufacturing and construction, not to mention, it's got computerized stuff in it. My phone, I got some cables that I just got from China. And guess what? They had computers involved in these manufacturing as well. This big ass jumbo M5000 firecracker that I have, manufacturing. I can't look at a single thing around me here that didn't involve computers somewhere in the manufacturing things. That includes the building I'm in. There is everything about this, the lumber, the people who were, even when you get into computer-aided design, right? Your architect doesn't sit down with a piece of paper and draw something out. He does it in computer-aided design. When I was teaching, we used to have this friendly little thing because they had an architecture department that used computer-aided design. And they would always say, oh, yes, computer-aided design is the best and hardest one. And we would always turn to them and say, yeah, but you need us to set up a computer before you can draw a straight line. That's pretty much accurate. Ultimately, and this is something that most companies don't get, without the IT, they're dead. And ultimately, all companies, to some extent, are IT companies, whether they know it or not. Because if you take out the IT, you no longer have a business. That's just the way things have turned out now. Drop 2 says, Guy Ritchie's film Wrath of Man is highly recommended. I'll take a look. Drop 2, the so-called lumber shortage in the U.S. now is complete BS. I don't know how to judge it. Lumber is not something that I deal with on any kind of a daily basis, so I don't know. Anything that I have to do with lumber is tiny amounts that, don't really get hit by price. And people who are, building houses and stuff, I tell you right now, in the market that I'm in, it's really a seller's market. My mother had a property that she had as an income property, a rental that she recently sold. Oh my God. Sold it for more than it was valued at for tax purposes, and sold it within a day. Just immediately got multiple offers. We were shocked at the amount of money that she made on that house. Shadow Man says, you're also in infrastructure, and yes, you think heads will roll too. What was the endpoint protection? Are there followers? Why would entire industry be affected? Again, we're dealing there, in terms of a very large multinational corporation that has a lot of fingers all over. And I don't think those should exist. I think if the federal government was doing their job, they would say, we have here a monopoly. This falls under monopoly laws. Break them up. I don't think those things should even exist. It's a seller's market in real estate too here in Australia. Yeah, I don't know how it is all over, but yeah, Shadow Man, there's going to be some heads that are going to roll. If I walked in there, I would say, okay, how did this happen? Well, that was stupid. Who put that together? Well, you get to be fired now. Yeah. Rich people are escaping Melbourne, Victoria. Here, it's just movement around internally. We sold this house to somebody who was a new family, never had their own home. I don't know what the rest of it looks like, but I do know from talking to people that the houses here do not stay on the market very long at all. So that's kind of what I have to say about that type of thing. And it's 11:54, and I do want to talk a bit about Superman Lois, Season 1, Episode 8. I will tell you, as always, unlike most reviewers, I do not sit down to rehash the plot, pausing to say what I liked or didn't like. Usually I'll have a lot more depth. This one's going to be kind of a quick and dirty one. But we will have to take it as read that if you have come and sat through this long enough to get here, you either have already watched this and you want a review of Superman and Lois Season 1, Episode 8, or you don't care if it's spoiled, but nevertheless, for safety's sake, we should probably issue a...
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. All hands, prepare for incoming spoilers.
Yes, it is a spoiler alert, and that is because I am a secret master of fandom, and that means that the fandom is strong with me. And this isn't a boast or a brag, this is just where you find yourself after having watched, read, and listened to over 100 years worth of science fiction. And the problem is with secret masters of fandom that we are cursed. We just can't see all this new stuff without seeing the century that came before, and we discover that very little is original, and it interferes with our ability to enjoy things sometimes. What I don't do are outrage reviews. There's a lot of reviewers on YouTube who are simply actors portraying outrage, because outrage sells. After 4 or so years of doing this, you discover that really what people like to be is outraged. They will come to be outraged about something or other and stick with you because of that. But to me, this causes a weird feedback loop between reviewers and fans, where ultimately nobody can like anything. But I don't do that. If I like something, I say why. If I don't like it, I'll say why. But, like other people, I am the adult in this room. So, Superman and Lois, Season 1, Episode 8. The ratings. I was worried about that because they had a hiatus, a stupid hiatus, and it caused their ratings to be lower, considerably lower last week. The ratings are back up. Not what they were before, but clearly climbing. Clearly, people like this show. No surprise, it's a good show. Generally well written. I do have some things to talk about that I think they shouldn't have done. Generally well written, well acted, just generally a good show, period. I sure hope that we hear that this thing is picked up for a second season, because we need more of this rather than Batwoman. Speaking of Batwoman, we're hearing reports that the virus prevented a crossover with Batwoman. Well, I guess the virus was good for something, because by God, we do not want Superman and Lois crossing over with Batwoman or any of the Arrowverse shows. It doesn't even look to me, from what little I know about Arrowverse, that this universe even has any connection to it, other than the fact we have 2 actors. Last I knew, I haven't watched it really since Crisis on Infinite Earths, but my understanding was that Superman and Lois only had 1 child, not twins. So how can that connect up? Doesn't make any sense. So, I hope please, no crossovers with Arrowverse. That would be bad. I am worried for Elizabeth Tulloch's health. And this is because she is so skinny. She's got to be anorexic at this point. You're being able to see veins in her head. She's got tendons that are just so clear, sunken cheeks, sunken eyeballs. She's really anorexic. God's sake, Elizabeth, get some weight. You're really thin. If you're that thin on TV, then in real life you are emaciated. I always like to point out the fact that many years ago I had occasion to shake the hand of Deborah Winger, who looked totally normal on screen. But you saw her in person, and I shook her hand, and I damn near had to stop myself from recoiling. She was so skinny. It was like shaking skin and bones. And that's somebody who looked normal on screen. For you to look this skinny and this emaciated, I can't imagine. What do you weigh, about 105 pounds? It's terrifying. It's okay. Gain a little weight. That's fine. You got some that you can put some meat on your bones. Do it. Shadow Man, you haven't watched the show yet. Well, I'm mostly going through nitpicks at this point. Yes, oh my God, Batwoman, it's a freaking zombie. Oh, Batwoman's so stupid, and I'm glad I don't have to deal with it anymore. Doubly thrilled because they have a hiatus of several weeks. Yay. With their crappy ratings, it'll give their few people were watching it time to totally forget about it and never come back to watch it again. How it keeps getting renewed, I have no idea. They've just reached a Friends reunion film. How unoriginal and desperate. Yes, Hollywood is completely out of ideas. Fond of saying the only real original ideas, and I mean in science fiction as well, are only coming out of YouTube content and video games. Those are really the only new content that's coming out there. Everything else is just rehashing things that have already been done, and to me that just shows a significant lack of originality and of creativity. In this episode, I very much liked, I was glad to see this, the concept that Jonathan has kind of become Lois's child and Jordan is Clark's child. I like this. The superpowered ones are off doing something. And then we have Lois Lane, right? She's an investigative reporter with a long history of getting into trouble that requires Superman's assistance. And I think it'd be very, very interesting to see Jonathan develop along the same lines. This would put them in the position of Lois basically having to tell Jonathan to not go things that would get him in trouble, despite the fact that this is precisely what Lois herself has done her entire career. I like that. I think that's great. And they sort of hinted at it here, but they did it in a different way that I didn't like. But the idea that Jonathan's like, okay, I can't be the superpowered guy. I'm going to be with my mom. And she's going to go out and do stuff that's dangerous. So will I. And at some point, she's going to be like, oh, my God, I about got the kid killed. He did something that I would have done. I don't do that stuff. But here she is still doing it herself. So I think that'd be a great dynamic to bring in. Dropper 2 says, you can recommend Superman Lois. It's proper Superman. Oh, yes. It's great. It's great. It usually hits this weird balance that you have to hit between the action and the drama. And where you get the drama, it's in appropriate places. It's not just them pulling up brakes to stop and talk about their feelings. It occurs naturally. It doesn't go overly long. It happens where it needs to, and things get resolved. It is a story of a family that is not dysfunctional. Things happen in it. It is, what if Superman had kids? And one of them has superpowers, the other one doesn't. So the drama comes out of there, and it's very, very good. One of the things I wouldn't have done with this episode was introduce the miscarriage. I would not have had the concept of Lois having a miscarriage after her first children were born. I don't think it was necessary. I think if you'd gone the way I just suggested, where she's got a kid who is now saying, okay, I got to do what my mom does. And he gets in serious trouble, and that causes her to go, oh, my God, I put that kid in serious trouble doing the exact same sort of things that I always do. And she gets real pissed at him about, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then just have to work through the fact that, oh, my God, I'm having an impact on this child that makes perfect sense for what I've always done. How is I'm his role model. How is he not going to do the sorts of things, the crazy stuff that I've done? So I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have had that in there at all. I just would have had it. Lois, her impressionable kid who's trying to emulate her, and he gets in trouble. She freaks out, and eventually at the end says, okay, look, I know you're trying to do the things that I'm trying to do, but you're a lot younger than when I started. You need to, when I tell you back off, and I'm really sorry that I got pissed, but I was afraid that you were going to get killed, and it was all going to be my fault, you know. Seeing Lois doing the therapist was kind of dumb. Drop of Truth, watch it tonight. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely watch it anytime it's on. Lois seeing a therapist was kind of dumb because therapy doesn't really work that way. You can't get any use from a therapist just by seeing them like twice, separated by what I guess in this case would be about 10, 12 years. Because, and in this case, you're talking about something that's going on with Lois, Superman, her child who has powers, the child that doesn't, and she can't talk to the therapist about what's really happening, which doesn't work. The therapist has got to know exactly what went on, or else they're not going to be able to help you at all. And the thing about this therapist is she does appear to be military. Now, Sam Lane, General Sam Lane, knows that Superman is Clark Kent. If you're going to have a therapist, and I can see where it might be useful under the circumstances, it is at this point appropriate to divulge the fact that Superman is Clark Kent to the therapist. She can't talk about it, both because it'd be classified, but also because she can't talk about it as a doctor. It's client-patient confidentiality. It would be okay. It would work. So it would allow an actual therapist from time to time, if you run into these issues. Okay, this is interesting. I've never had a patient married to Superman before. I've never had a patient who's got a super child. The interesting things that you could do with that. But if you're not going to do it, if you're just going to do it the way they had, then you need to have the conversation just between Lois and Clark. I do like the fact that Sam Lane likes to think about hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. This is not him being a jerk. This is exactly what military people do. People, you don't know this. I mean, drop of truth. Guess what? That somewhere in Washington, enshrined in a little folder, is a battle plan for invading Australia. Trust me, there is. They have plans for everything, regardless of whether it's highly unlikely to ever happen. They're still going to have the plans. That's normal for the military. You look at a situation, you say, what could happen if U.S. and Australia go to war? What do we do? And they come up with some kind of plan. So for General Lane to be coming up with plans and weapons to, use against Superman, against Kryptonians, I'm fine with that, and so should Clark. This is what military personnel do. They come up with, plans for any given circumstance. And again, as always, Superman is someone that in the real world you would not allow to exist. He would be too powerful. The potential for him to do horrible things would be too much. So I'm fine with that, and I think Clark gets that too, and I'm good with that. Have to ask, why isn't that Jonathan, Jordan, and Lois all have this pager? Jonathan was stuck in this RV about mere moments away from being shot to hell. And if he'd had one of those things, Superman would have come and saved him just that much quicker. I don't know why the things aren't just a signal watch. I mean, in comics, TV, Jimmy Olsen has had a signal watch since forever. Why are these things, these big things that you have to push? Why isn't it a signal watch? It makes it harder for bad guys who don't know that there's a signal watch. It's sort of a cheat in some ways. It means your characters can't be in a certain level of danger. But, if you're going to do this stuff, if your kids are going to be in on this, if they're going to be participating, every single one of them should have one of those pagers. Okay, your company's arrived, so I have to go. Thank you very much for the kind words about my show. I'll see you later. Other just minor things. Why is Clark not shaving or not shaving regularly? I don't get it. And they've done this the whole series. And please, by God, for God's sake, more super feats in clear lighting, please. Like we got with Superman saving that bridge in China in like the second episode. We've seen a lot of stuff in the dark, a lot of stuff in green now. Do something outdoors, right where everybody can see him, and we can see him. I want to see Superman doing super feats in daylight. As always, my major contribution to this that's actually unique is the fact that my state borders Kansas on the south, and so I can ask, okay, does this make sense? Is this realistic? And as always, they generally have been. I do always like to point out, link in my description box below, that the location of Smallville, as I have calculated, is at 37 degrees, 18 minutes, 35.0 seconds north by 94 degrees, 42 minutes, 19.3 degrees west. And the distance to Metropolis is unknown. However, Metropolis from calculations must now be somewhere in Kansas. And I don't like that. But I haven't seen anything that would say, no, it can't be in Kansas yet. I just don't like it. It's always been a coastal city, and but they haven't changed it. They haven't done anything this episode that says, no, you're totally wrong. It can't be that way. So, yay for that. So, it is now a bit after midnight. I've been at this for a little more than 3 hours, and my lower back is starting to hurt. So I tell you what, one other thing that I'm going to do, and please, for God's sake, give me some feedback, either here or in my, probably because I'm going to drop off pretty directly after this. Leave me some comments, because I'm going to start a new channel, a second channel. You can do that on YouTube, where you have a main channel and a second channel. And I'm going to start a second channel. And that's because I have been spending the last few weeks having endless fun upscaling lower quality resolution videos to at least 1080p and then interpolating so that they go from their native frame rate to at least 50 frames per second and sometimes 60. I mean, I have had an extraordinary amount of luck with this, with the 1940s Fleischer Superman cartoons, and those are in the public domain. I'm going to post them. It is quite amazing. It's quite amazing because those guys were freaking brilliant. They were brilliant. They were animating at 24 frames per second. So when you upscale to 1080p, it looks great. And then when you interpolate over to 60 frames per second, oh my God, it just totally comes to life. They were doing brilliant work, and I'm going to do them all, and I want to post them all. But I don't want to post them here on my regular channel because that content doesn't really fit. I'll be doing some other things, probably bits and pieces of Star Trek episodes, bits and pieces of things like Forbidden Planet. Plan 9 from Outer Space is going to get the treatment. I think there's some ones in there that'll be just hysterical to see in 1080p at 60 frames per second. So there's a bunch of stuff that I'm going to be taking out clips, and again, the entire episode for the Fleischer Superman cartoon. Every single one of them I will be putting up probably about a week apart. Just like this is what you would have seen this week. That's what you would have seen the next and the next. So I don't know everything that I'll be doing with it, but that sort of content is what I'm looking at, is taking some of these videos and upscaling and interpolating them so that they just look really cool and really fluid movements. Shadow Man, I got a great stream. Great having Marshall. Yes, it was a productive talk about the hack. I stayed here the entire time. Glad you were. Great. But anyway, if you got some ideas about what I can call this thing, I will change its name and immediately put up at least one video. I've got the first Superman cartoon already upscaled to 4K and 60 frames per second. I'm sorry, 48 frames per second. That looks beautiful. You'd be amazed. It looks really, really good. The motions are so fluid, and the size of it, I don't lose anything in terms of the resolution. It looks great. Have tried it, by the way, on Star Trek the Animated Series. Sucks. And that's because they weren't really edited. They weren't really animating at 24 frames per second. They were animating at much less than that and would occasionally have characters move, but not at 24 frames per second. So when you upscale, it doesn't get any better. I've also tried doing it on things like the old Flash Gordon serials, Buck Rogers. I need better prints. You get some help with that, but it doesn't look that great. So what am I using to do the upscales? Well, I am using for upscaling from lower resolutions, and some of them are pretty low, to 4K, 1080p or higher, program called, let me find it, Topaz Video Enhancer AI. It's really good. That is a pay program. I'm currently on a 30-day trial. I got about 15 left, but I'm doing a lot of stuff with that. The one that I'm using to interpolate so that I can get from 24, anywhere from 24 to 30 frames per second up to anywhere between 48 and 60. That is a program, a free program called Flow Frames. Also really, really good. I'm having extraordinary luck with them. So what I'm probably going to do is come up with a second channel to put that stuff on because it doesn't really fit the content here. But I was really enthused by what I had there. And as I say, looking at those Superman ones, I'm a big fan of those Fleischer Superman cartoons. And the idea of having those up where people can see, hey, wow, these guys, they were animating at 24 frames per second. So when you get it up to, 48, 50 frames per second, oh, it just looks beautiful. Looks really good. So I guess that is about all that I have to say about that. I would certainly love to keep the conversation going, so please do leave your questions, comments, nasty remarks, and any suggestions you might have for a name of a second channel. And definitely, like, sub, hit the notification bell, and share me on social media because that's the only way that I grow. So, thank you for watching this episode of Tales from SYL Ranch, and I'm Bill Stone.
Our world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.